Chapter 932. However, if one thought about it carefully, it was not strange. The battlefield imprint of Myriad Devil Ridge was exchanged from the War Merit Pavilion. Although it could only last for 4 hours, it still had the effect it should have. In a sense, it was the real battlefield imprint of Myriad Devil Ridge. It was naturally not a problem to monitor it through the restrictions of Myriad Devil City. The woman should have been to Myriad Devil City many times. She flew in a direction with ease. Soon she landed in a small courtyard. She turned to look at Tong Shuyao. "I'll heal my injuries first. You two can go." As she said this, she gave Tong Shuyao a look. "Yes, Martial Ant." Tong Shuyao replied respectfully, understanding tacitly. After the woman left, Tong Shuyao looked at Lu Yi. "Junior brother Tai Bai, this is your first time in Myriad Devil City. Do you want me to show you around?" Lu Yi wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, he nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll have to trouble senior sister Tong. Let's go, you're welcome." The situation in Myriad Devil City was roughly the same as Vast Sky City. At this stage, the number of cultivators in Myriad Devil City was not too many, which was within the normal range. Occasionally, one could see some Divine Ocean Realm cultivators flying around. Tong Shuyao led Lu Yi around the city of 10,000 demons for a while before saying, "Junior brother Tai Bai, although you were born in the Wushuang continent, now that you've come to the 9 provinces and entered the 10,000 Demons Ridge, you'll have to join the state guards in the end. Once you join the state guards, you'll be able to make contributions and gain military merits." She had received a hint from the woman before. This trip was not only to monitor Lu Yi, but also to find a way to persuade him. To her, she naturally hoped that this junior brother Tai Bai could join the state guard and serve under Martial Ant. Although the woman could force Lu Yi to join the state guard with her methods and cultivation, a forcibly picked melon would not be sweet. It was better if he was willing. "Senior sister Tong is right." Lu Yi answered with his mouth, but he was thinking in his heart. In the current situation he could not leave even if he wanted to. It was really troublesome. Tong Shuyao followed him like a dog's skin plaster. He could not get rid of her even if he wanted to. If he acted rashly, she would immediately send a message to the woman. He was puzzled. There are so many talents in the Myriad Demons Ridge. Why did your uncle master pick me? Martial Ant's eyes are as sharp as torches. Tong Shuyao giggled, her face slightly red. She couldn't tell Lu Yi that she was the one who had begged for this. Lu Yi thought that it was because of his good performance that caught the eye of the woman at the Spirit Sea realm. Little did he know that in the end, it was his handsome appearance that got him in trouble. Although Tong Shuyao and the woman were martial ants, they were as close as mother and daughter. Tong Shuyao had begged her in the tent, and the woman had naturally agreed. In addition, Lu Yi's previous performance was indeed not bad, and his cultivation was sufficient, so it was more than enough for him to join the state guards. She originally thought that Lu Yi would be grateful to her for personally coming forward to recruit him, but who would have thought that Lu Yi would not directly reply to her, which made her very worried. "I want to go to the Tianji Hall to buy some things for cultivation. Senior sister Tong, please take me there," Lu Yi said. "This way." Tong Shuyao bounced up and down with her hands behind her back. She seemed to be in a good mood. From the looks of it, those true Lake Realm cultivators who had died earlier should not have a close relationship with her. Soon they arrived at a Tianji Hall. Lu Yi pressed his hand on the Tianji pillar and entered the War Merit Pavilion. He then exchanged for a Myriad Devil Ridge battlefield imprint. Only then did he calm down. Walking out of the Tianji Hall, he saw Tong Shuyao waiting for him. Lu Yi stepped forward and said, "Senior sister Tong, may I trouble you to tell your martial aunt that I am willing to join the state guards and serve under your martial aunt?" He had thought it through. Since some things could not be avoided, he could only face them head-on. Moreover, looking at it from another perspective, this might not be a bad thing. If he could really join the state guards of the Myriad Devil Ridge, it would be convenient for him to spy on the Myriad Devil Ridge in the future. He might even be able to play an unexpected role in certain situations. Normally, Haoyan Alliance would have to go through a lot of trouble just to insert a spy into the Myriad Devil Ridge. The conditions on his side were readily available, so it would be a pity not to make use of it. "Really?" Tong Shuyao looked very happy. Lu Yi nodded. "Really? That's great, but you'll have to wait for 2 days. Martial Ant is recuperating. When she comes out of seclusion, I'll tell her immediately." On the way back, Tong Shuyao's mood was clearly better. She was humming a tune, and the smile on her face never disappeared. After returning to the small courtyard, everyone rested. In the next 2 days, Tong Shuyao came to look for Lu Yi from time to time, causing him to feel helpless. 2 days later, the woman came out of seclusion. As expected, Tong Shuyao immediately reported that Lu Yi was willing to join the state guards. Only then did the woman look at Lu Yi with a much gentler gaze. She called out, "Follow me." Lu Yi had the experience of joining the state guards in Haotian alliance, but he did not expect to do it again after a few months. Moreover, this time he was joining the state guards of the Myriad Devil Ridge. The process was similar to that of Haotian alliance. First, he went to the military recruitment department to register and receive a guard order. Then he borrowed the war merit plate to calculate his military achievements and confirm his military rank. Logically speaking, one's identity had to be verified during registration. To the cultivators of the 9 continents, this was not difficult. They only needed to send a few messages to find out the situation. However, Li Taibai's identity was from the unparalleled continent, and he was a rogue cultivator without any evidence. It was very difficult for the military recruitment department to verify his identity. Furthermore, with the woman as a guarantor, this matter was left unsettled. Naturally, Li Taibai's identity did not obtain any military achievements. Therefore, when Lu Yi activated the Myriad Devil Ridge battlefield imprint on the war merit plate, a white light appeared. Logically speaking, Lu Yi could only start from the most basic soldier. However, because Lu Yi was in the true lake stage, he obtained the military rank of a fruit guard. This rule was the same as Haotian alliances. True lake stage cultivators were all in the same realm, and even the weakest one would be a guowei. Of course, if Lu Yi wanted to be promoted in the future, he would have to accumulate a certain amount of battle merits. Following the woman out of the military recruitment department, Lu Ye's emotions were complicated. What a mess! Now he had 2 official identities. The first was naturally Lu Yi of the Blue Blood sect, and the second was Li Taibai, a rogue cultivator from the unparalleled continent. The Myriad Devil Ridge battlefield imprint also had records because when Lu Yi immersed himself in investigating, the battlefield imprint gave him some information. Name, Li Taibai. Identity, rogue cultivator from the unparalleled continent. Cultivation, 3rd Order True Lake Stage. Location, Myriad Devil City. Merit, 0. War merit, 0. Lu Yi had checked his Myriad Devil Ridge battlefield imprint before, but there was no record at all. But now there was. Obviously, he had obtained the recognition of Heaven's secret. Let's go. Follow me back to the mountain pass. The woman called out. This time she did not let Lu Yi and Tong Shuyao fly. Instead, she summoned a flight-type spirit artifact and carried them out of Myriad Devil City. Normally, when one's cultivation entered the state guard, they would be transferred to a mountain pass by the official department. But this woman was in the Spirit Sea realm, so her status in Myriad Devil Ridge was not low. It was naturally no problem for her to ask for a person from the official department. So, when Lu Yi entered the Myriad Devil Ridge State Guard, he was one of her subordinates. This queen is Lin Yu, the Dark Moon Forest Mountain Pass Lord of Bright Jade Pass. From now on you will serve under me. When we reach the mountain pass, I will give you the position of front advisor. In the future you and Yao will help each other. If you have any questions you can ask Yao, the woman said. It was only at this moment that Lu Yi learned of the woman's name. He muttered to himself that there really was a position of front advisor. When Yi had received this position from the missing Moon Immortal, Lu Yi had thought that the missing Moon Immortal had casually given it to her. Now it seemed that this position really existed. Many thanks for Senior's care. Lu Yi bowed. Call me Senior. Tong Shuyao tugged at Lu Ye's sleeve. Many thanks, Senior. Lu Yi readily accepted. Tong Shuyao asked again, Martial Ant, is that poisonous woman still in Li Yuan? Will we meet her? Lin Yu shook her head and said, she's no longer here. A few days ago, news came that she had killed her way out of Li Yuan and returned to Mount Vicissitude. She's really powerful. Tong Shuyao praised. Lu Ye's expression was calm. He had contacted Thought Moon Immortal once before and knew about her current situation. She also asked about his location and situation. Lu Yi couldn't say it clearly, not because of anything else. He was just afraid that she would be worried, so he told her that he had encountered some opportunities and would return later. Thought Moon Immortal didn't suspect anything. Although she was worried about Lu Ye's safety, it wasn't good for her to go deeper into Li Yuan. Along the way everything was calm and peaceful. The previously lively Li Yuan also quieted down because of Thought Moon Immortal's departure. The many flying swords that escaped from the Sword Instrument sect's secret realm basically all had owners now. A Divine Sea Realm cultivator's flying speed was very fast. Even if Lin Yu didn't rush at full speed, it only took her 4 to 6 hours to reach Dark Moon Forest Mountain Pass. On the side of Wanmo Ridge, Dark Moon Forest Mountain belonged to Bright Jade Pass. On the side of Haotian Alliance, it belonged to Heaven Gate Pass. The two lines of defense of the two camps looked at each other from afar and had been fighting for many years. Looking from afar, one could see the figures of cultivators moving around in the city. Compared to the dilapidated Blue Flame Mountain City, this place was undoubtedly more lively. Both camps, many people were dumbfounded. Every mountain pass was guarded by horses. Only the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass situation was special. It was filled with a deathly aura. For the past few decades, Thought Moon Immortal was the only lone person there. Of course, this also benefited from Thought Moon Immortal's powerful strength. Her strength was more than enough to be the pass lord. However, because she didn't like to fight for power and she had her own insistence, she had always stayed at Blue Flame Mountain Pass. It was Lu Ye's recent arrival that added some liveliness to Blue Flame Mountain Pass. Flying into Dark Moon Forest Mountain Pass, a cultivator immediately came up to her and reported the recent troop movements and many other situations. Tong Shuyao and Lu Yi followed behind Lin Yu and silently listened to her orders. After a long while, Lin Yu waved her hand and the cultivator who came to report respectfully left. Turning around, she ordered Tong Shuyao, "Take him down and settle him down." Yes. Tong Shuyao accepted the order. Chapter 933. The Dark Moon Forest Pass wasn't too big, but it wasn't small either. It was similar to the situation at Ashen Flame Mountain Pass. Lu Yi followed Tong Shuyao and flew in a certain direction, listening to her chatter while silently observing. Although he had been to Lonely Mountain Pass last time, he had come and gone in a hurry so he didn't see much. Although he had come to another pass this time, he could still infer the situation of the cultivators at Myriad Devil Ridge through some clues. It had to be said that the mountain pass with people was still very lively. It was unlike Ashen Flame Mountain where Lu Yi usually saw Nian Yuxian and no one else. Tong Shuyao was undoubtedly quite popular here. Many cultivators they met along the way greeted her, and she responded enthusiastically. There were also some people who were interested in Lu Yi. After all, Lu Yi's appearance was not bad, and he was suspected to be a sword cultivator. With Tong Shuyao accompanying him, he naturally attracted attention. After sending away a few waves of people who came to strike up a conversation, Tong Shuyao secretly looked at Lu Yi proudly. However, she saw that he had an indifferent expression and was looking left and right, paying no attention to her. She couldn't help but feel annoyed and lost interest in talking. Soon she led Lu Yi to a house. "This will be your residence from now on. You can move freely when there's no battle. Just don't leave the range of the pass's defensive line. If there's a battle there will be orders. When the time comes just follow orders." After she finished speaking, she glared at Lu Yi. "You've been busy all the way. Take a rest." The little girl left in a huff, and Lu Yi immediately felt relaxed. He pushed open the door and walked in. The room was too small and the conditions weren't good, but it was much better than these soldiers who lived in the same room. Ling Qi retreated into the room, and after some investigation he set up a few formations to protect and isolate them. He took Hooper out of the spirit beast pouch and heavily knocked on Hoopo's big head. Yi immediately flashed out, took a long breath and stuck her tongue out at Ling Qi. "Too slow. You're suffocating." When he was with Tong Shuyao, although Hoopa could run around everywhere, he still had the spirit beast pouch that was taken away. However, ever since Yi had been hiding in Hoopo's body for about 2 months, she hadn't shown her face until now. After such a long time he was really suffocated. Very slowly you realized that he was right. Spirit weapon, how did he become so handsome? Although their appearances were the same, Hoopa had been with the spirit tool for so many years, so he would naturally be able to tell the identity of the spirit tool at a glance. Moreover, if it wasn't the spirit tool himself, Hoopa would have been able to detect it at the first moment. After all, the man and beast had formed a pet contract. It's a long story. Wang Guang let out a sigh. That time I had no idea what to say. I didn't even know where to start. Where is that? As Yi spoke, she checked her own battlefield imprint and slowly found out the location. She was surprised. Dark Moon Forest Pass? Why did he run to the outside world? Was he caught? However, looking at the appearance of the spirit artifact, there were no traces of it being caught. Instead, it looked like it was here as a guest. Helplessly, the spirit tool could only tell them everything that had happened before the sword tool Tong Shuyao came out, causing Yi and Hoopo's eyes to widen. No one would have thought that Wang Guang had accidentally infiltrated the enemy's ranks, and now he had even become a member of the Myriad Devil Ridge's prefecture guards. What did he do in the past? He could always stay outside, right? he asked. Although the identity of the Myriad Devil Ridge Prefecture Guard was determined by Heaven's will, my roots were still a disciple of the Jade Blood Sect and a cultivator of the Grand Heaven Alliance. Naturally, I could always stay outside. You have to worry. It's actually difficult to escape, but now that you don't have that identity, you can leave slowly. When it's time to leave, you will naturally leave. Yi nodded. Let's cultivate first, the spiritual tool said. Then it was told of its unique cultivation method of stealing heaven's secrets. 2 months later, I broke through to the True Lake Realm 8th Order. At that time, I felt that my cultivation was declining too slowly, so I needed to hurry. Now that 2 months have passed, it's time to continue cultivating. I went to exchange for the Golden Spirit Lot. Although I didn't have many merits, if I used the Spirit Lot to cultivate, I would have a way to stop it at will. Otherwise it would be a waste. Now that I was in the enemy's camp and had just arrived, it was better to be safe. The power of the talent tree was activated and its roots spread out, probing into the vortex of spirit energy. With the spirit tool's current foundation, he naturally had to put all his attention into activating the power of the talent tree. I already had my own divine sense, so I could divide my attention and use the power of my soul. After letting the roots of the talent tree absorb the rich world energy, the spirit tool first took out the long sword at his waist. The long sword's quality was low, only at the level of a low-grade spirit artifact. It was a sword that I carefully found in my storage space and I didn't know when I got it. Now that I was a sword cultivator and had reached the True Lake Realm 8th Order, a low-grade spirit artifact sword was enough to satisfy my requirements. At the very least, I didn't have a suitable long sword. It would be best if it was a magic artifact. Among my spoils of war, there were items that couldn't reach the magic artifact level because they came from the Cloud River battlefield. At the very least, they were top-grade spirit artifacts. Therefore, I needed to go to the Sky Secret Hall or the War Merit Pavilion to exchange for a magic artifact level longsword. It was slow. Then Wenguang took out the sword gourd at his waist. It was given to me by Kong Kong when Sword Tool Tong Shuyao collapsed. It was the token of the Sword Tool Sect's sect master. It was an extremely common treasure, and Kong Kong only said that it was limited in its mysteries. But in the past few days, the spirit tool had the time to study it. Now he had the time. Holding the sword gourd, he poured his spirit energy into it and refined it quickly. Time passed. At a certain moment, the spirit tool suddenly opened its eyes and looked at the sword gourd in its hand. I knew that the item's quality was definitely common, but after refining it, I was also confused about the quality of this treasure. But now, it seemed that its quality was so low that it exceeded my expectations. That's because I sensed countless restrictions in the sword gourd. The treasures of the 4 provinces were divided by the number of seals, and their quality was high and low. Above the 88 seals was Wenguang. Below that were the magic artifacts, with a limit of 140 seals. Below that were the land leaf grade, with a limit of 880 seals. There were many land leaf grade treasures in the 4 provinces, but the spirit tool was vague because those things were exclusive to Divine Ocean Realm cultivators. I didn't have the land leaf 4 formation diagram that Master had given me. As the spirit tool's cultivation base and knowledge increased, it could vaguely sense that the 4 formation diagram was of the lowest quality among the land leaf grade treasures. It was true that Master was willing to give it up, but that thing had long surpassed the spirit tool's ability to activate it. Even if he gave me a better one, I would still activate it. The 4 provinces didn't have a land leaf like the 4 formation diagram. It was called the Mountain River diagram. It was a top-grade land leaf, but its power was limited. The 4 formation diagram was refined by imitating the Mountain River diagram. The Mountain River diagram contained 880 seals. It was the top land leaf grade treasure in the 4 provinces, and also the most precious treasure of a small sect. There were few treasures more powerful than the Mountain River diagram in the world. But the spirit tool felt more than 880 seals in the sword gourd. That meant that the eye-catching sword gourd in my hand was a treasure that surpassed the land leaf grade treasures. What grade were the treasures below the land leaf grade treasures? Suddenly, I remembered Kong Kong's words. The sword gourd was born from heaven and earth. It was picked up by the sword tool sect's 4th ancestor in a desperate situation. It was slightly refined by the 18th ancestor. At that time, the sword tool Wenguangliang was about to collapse, so the spirit tool didn't think much. But now that I thought about it, I immediately realized that it was a piece of information. Kong Kong was definitely a weak cultivator who had surpassed the Divine Ocean Realm. The sword tool sect was also filled with weak cultivators back then. The 4th ancestor and 18th ancestor's cultivation base, even if they were weaker than Kong Kong, were still stronger than mine. They were both sword tool sect masters, so who could be weaker than the other? Such a weak cultivator picked up a treasure in a desperate situation. Even a weakling like that could only refine the treasure a little more. From this, it could be seen that the sword gourd was ordinary. Moreover, the sword gourd was born from heaven and earth, not something that was man-made. Its origin was even more mysterious. The spirit tool was shocked. I didn't think that the item Kong Kong passed down to me would be so valuable. Fortunately, the sword gourd's appearance was good. Otherwise, Lin Yu would have seen through it. Even a divine ocean realm cultivator would be tempted by such a treasure. But, could I, a true lake realm cultivator, activate such a treasure? Even a land leaf grade treasure like the forefront formation would have a hard time activating it. Let alone the sword gourd that was below the forefront formation in terms of quality. But there were too many problems with refining it. As his spirit power continued to pour in, Wang Guang couldn't sense the mysteries of the sword gourd. First he thought too little. It was too late to look at it after refining it. But there were too few seals in the sword gourd. It was impossible to completely refine it in a short time. He could only take it slowly. After making up his mind, the spirit tool continued to refine the sword gourd. 2 days ago, the spirit tool opened its eyes and picked up the sword gourd. It pointed the mouth of the sword gourd at the low-grade spirit treasure level sword and poured its spirit power into the sword gourd. A huge pulling force came from the mouth of the sword gourd. The sword on the ground flew up and disappeared into the sword gourd. In just a moment, the spirit tool sensed something. Something was missing from the sword gourd. Although it was called Dao, when the spirit tool used its spirit power to sense it, it could sense an extremely sharp aura. Instead, the sword that was swallowed was nowhere to be seen. The spirit tool checked for a while and finally confirmed what was missing from the sword gourd. Sword energy. I suddenly understood how mysterious the sword gourd was. It could actually devour a long sword, and in a very short period of time, turn the long sword into sword energy and store it inside. Chapter 934. The number of sword chi in the sword gourd was exactly 9. 9 was the extreme number. The number of heaven and earth began with 1 and ended with 9. Lu Yi could not help but ponder about this number. Because he had slightly refined the sword gourd, he could clearly sense the existence of these 9 sword chi. He could even feel that these 9 sword chi could be released at will. In other words, these 9 newly born sword chi were completely under his control. He just did not know how powerful they were. Lu Yi took out the breath fruit core and spent 200 merit points to enter the Mirage realm to try. After a while, he opened his eyes with excitement. After some testing, he found that the sword chi in the sword gourd was extremely lethal. The power of each sword chi was equivalent to his full strength attack. And this was under the premise that he did not activate the power of the sword gourd itself. Because the sword gourd's grade was too high, he could not activate its power at all. He could only control the sword chi's own power. If he could activate the power of the sword gourd one day, the sword chi's power would be greatly increased. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi quickly took out a large number of spoils from the storage space and let the sword gourd devour them. Every spiritual artifact that entered the sword gourd would disappear in an extremely short amount of time, turning into 9 streaks of sword chi. First, this token from the sword tool sect was like a fierce beast. No matter how many spiritual weapons Lu Yi took out, it would devour them all. There was no limit to it. Lu Yi had a lot of spoils. In the past, he could only sell them to the Tianji treasure house in exchange for merit points. But now, with the increase of his cultivation, merit points were not very useful to him. He could use them to feed the sword gourd. Half an hour later, Lu Yi sensed that there were countless sword chi in the sword gourd. However, he soon discovered a problem. Every spirit weapon that was swallowed by the sword gourd would turn into 9 rays of sword chi. However, the strength of these rays of sword chi seemed to be related to the grade of the spirit weapon. Therefore, the sword chi in the sword gourd was different. At first, there was no comparison, so he did not notice this, but now he found it. He took out the breath fruit core again and entered the Mirage realm to try again. In the end, he came to the conclusion that there was indeed a difference between strong and weak sword chi. It was directly related to the grade of the spiritual weapon that the blade gourd devoured. The higher the grade of the spiritual weapon, the stronger the sword chi that was converted. However, no matter how weak the sword chi was, it was equivalent to an ordinary slash from his saber. Once the sword chi transformed from an upper-grade spiritual weapon was activated, it was almost the same as an all-out attack from him. As for the sword chi transformed from an ultra-grade spiritual weapon, it was even sharper. Lu Yi didn't let the blade gourd devour any Dharma artifact-grade spirit weapons. The main reason was that he only had the Panshan saber. He couldn't let the blade gourd devour it. But according to the current pattern, if the sword gourd could devour a spiritual artifact, the power of the sword chi produced would most likely exceed his own strength. Lu Yi finally understood the mysteries of the sword gourd. With this treasure in hand, as long as he had enough resources, he could unleash strength beyond his own. Li Taibai's identity was a sword cultivator. He originally wanted to find time to go to the Qinji treasure vault to buy a few more flying swords, but from the looks of it now, it was completely unnecessary. With the sword gourd in hand, why would he need a flying sword? Every single sword energy was equivalent to a flying sword. Li Baxin could control 100 swords back then, which made Lu Yi gasp in amazement. But now, not only could he control 100 swords, he could even control 1,000 or 10,000 swords. Of course, sword chi was different from a real flying sword. Once sword chi was released, it would disappear. Flying swords could be retrieved. At the moment, he still couldn't activate the sword gourd's power. If he could one day activate the sword gourd's power, who knew what kind of changes would occur to the sword chi contained within? Lu Yi originally thought that the greatest benefit he'd gained from the sword instrument sect's secret realm was that he'd gained a rudimentary understanding of the art of refining. But now it seemed that the sword gourd was the greatest benefit. With this sword gourd, he was a true sword cultivator. The original high-grade spiritual artifact sword had been devoured, so Lu Yi found a supreme-grade spiritual artifact sword to replace it. As for the Dharma artifact sword he'd originally planned to buy from the Tianji treasure vault, it was completely unnecessary now. There was a light knock on the door. Lu Yi waved at Yi and Hupa. The two understood, and Yi quickly entered Hupo's body. Hupa jumped over and was put into Lu Ye's spiritual beast pouch. He got up and opened the door. As expected, Tong Shuyao was standing outside. "Junior brother Tai Bai, you're finally willing to see me?" Tong Shuyao looked unhappy. The main reason was that she'd come to see Lu Yi several times in the past 2 days, but Lu Yi didn't respond each time. Most cultivators were cultivating in seclusion, so she didn't want to disturb them too much. Every time, she'd come in high spirits only to return in disappointment. Lu Yi didn't want to see her, nor did he want to have anything to do with her. But hiding like this wasn't a solution. Since he'd gone deep into the enemy's camp, he naturally couldn't stay in seclusion forever. He should go out and take a look. Only then would this trip be worthwhile. "What's the matter?" Lu Yi asked with a calm expression. "Can't I come to see you if there's nothing?" Tong Shuyao pouted. She put her hands behind her back and leaned forward slightly, looking a little playful. Lu Ye's gaze moved down a little uncontrollably. The dojo's enemy wouldn't lose his balance and fall to the ground. Faintly sensing Lu Ye's gaze, Tong Shuyao's face turned slightly red. She immediately stood up straight, puffed out her chest and grabbed Lu Ye's arm. "Let's go. I'll take you to see something fun." She didn't care if Lu Yi agreed or not and soared into the air. Lu Yi could only helplessly follow. Along the way, many myriad Devil Ridge cultivators set off from the Dark Moon Forest Pass and rushed in the same direction. It was extremely lively. Some cultivators who knew Tong Shuyao came to strike up a conversation with her, but they were all mercilessly chased away by Xiao Lishu. Lu Yi immediately sensed a lot of unhappy gazes on him. This reminded him of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivator who'd warned him to stay away from Tong Shuyao, or else he'd die a horrible death. In the end, he died with remaining grievances. The destination didn't seem to be near. After flying for a while, they still hadn't arrived. Lu Yi didn't ask too much. He just looked around with a look of extreme curiosity. He didn't know what he wanted to see. Since he was already here, it wouldn't hurt to look around. Tong Shuyao had nothing to say and Lu Yi just responded. This made Tong Shuyao feel helpless, but she faintly sensed that this junior brother Tai Bai beside her seemed to have a naturally cold temperament, and it wasn't directed at her. Thinking of this, she felt a little better. Finally, after flying for a few hundred kilometers, they arrived at a lively place. Lu Yi looked from afar and saw two figures fighting endlessly in an open space. Their spiritual energy surged and the battle was abnormally fierce. On the periphery of this battlefield, near the Dark Moon Forest Pass, a large number of cultivators gathered in the sky and on the ground. On the other side, there was also a large number of cultivators gathered. The two sides were separated by the open space in the middle of the battlefield, facing each other from afar. They were like fire and water. Lu Yi didn't understand what was going on and didn't know what was going on. He followed Tong Shuyao to the crowd and found a place to stand, watching the battle from above. At this time, the two people fighting were both armament cultivators. One used a saber, the other a spear, and their cultivations were at the 3rd or 4th order True Lake realm. The battle between armament cultivators was the most dangerous. Every move was deadly. On the other side, there was also a large number of cultivators gathered. The two sides were separated by the open space in the middle of the battlefield, facing each other from afar. They were like fire and water. Lu Yi didn't understand what was going on and didn't know what was going on. He followed Tong Shuyao to the crowd and found a place to stand, watching the battle from above. At this time, the two people fighting were both armament cultivators. One used a saber, the other used a spear, and their cultivations were at the 3rd or 4th order True Lake realm. The battle between armament cultivators was the most dangerous. Every move was deadly and every move was deadly. Similarly, it was the most interesting to watch. These two people were definitely cultivators from two different camps, otherwise they wouldn't be fighting so fiercely. However, Lu Yi didn't know which one of them was from Grand Heaven Alliance, and which one was from Myriad Demon's Ridge. However, he focused more of his attention on the saber cultivator. No matter what, he was also a saber cultivator. Although his current saber technique was probably far superior to that of cultivators in the same realm, Lu Yi would not become arrogant just because of his various opportunities. As he watched, Lu Yi couldn't help but have some doubts. He didn't know why, but he felt that this saber cultivator looked familiar. He vaguely felt like he had seen him somewhere before. But after thinking about it, he was sure that he had never seen this person before. This feeling was very strange. When he took a closer look, he discovered another strange thing. The saber cultivator's saber techniques gave him a strong sense of déjà vu. While he was watching, Tong Shuyao took the initiative to explain the situation to him. The two camps have been fighting for thousands of years. The military province is divided into two, and each camp occupies half of it. There are many mountain passes at the front line that are facing each other. Some of the battles are extremely fierce, while others are relatively peaceful. Our Dark Moon Forest Pass is one of the more peaceful mountain passes. But no matter how peaceful it is, some battles are inevitable. Large-scale battles don't happen often, but these kinds of private small-scale battles happen almost every day. Junior Marshal Brother Tai Bai, you've just come to the 9 states and joined the State Guard, so you probably haven't obtained any battle merits. To every cultivator, battle merits are extremely important. Those mountain passes with frequent battles are naturally easy to obtain battle merits, but it's not so easy to obtain battle merits in our Dark Moon Forest Pass and the Shocking Waves Lake Pass on the opposite side, because usually you're invincible. So the Divine Ocean Realm cultivators on both sides came up with an idea. It's like the battle you're seeing now. Every victory will be rewarded with battle merits. I'm not sure about the rewards at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, but here at the Dark Moon Forest Pass, every victory will be rewarded with 1,000 battle merits. If you can kill the enemy, then you'll get 2,000 points. Lu Yi nodded slightly, finally understanding the situation in front of him. This was the show that Tong Shuyao had brought him here to watch. In fact, it wasn't just the Dark Moon Forest Pass and the Shocking Waves Lake Pass that were like this. At the front lines of the two camps, there were many similar situations at many mountain passes. Under the premise that there was no war, if cultivators wanted to obtain battle merits, they could only rely on their monthly salary. But if their military rank wasn't high, their monthly salary wouldn't be much. Lu Yi was now a lieutenant, and under the care of the Yearning Moon Immortal, he held 2 positions, and his monthly salary was only 60,000 battle merits. If it were other cultivators, just the battle merits they received every month wouldn't be enough to satisfy their cultivation needs. Chapter 935. Thus, this special way of obtaining battle merits was initiated. This was also the tacit agreement of the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators on both sides. The Spirit Sea Realm cultivators still had the right to reward the victor with a certain amount of battle merits. When Lu Yi first arrived and was tortured by Thought Moon Immortal, she would reward him with battle merits after every mission was completed. If Thought Moon Immortal could do that, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators here could do the same, and they were even more justified than Thought Moon Immortal. Heaven's Secret wouldn't punish them for this. In addition, cultivators were a group of people who never knew their place and were the most competitive. With such an occasion, it just so happened that cultivators could show off their strength and improve their combat skills. It could be said that this was killing several birds with one stone. I don't seem to see any cultivators above the True Lake Realm 8th Order, Lu Yi said. Tong Shuyao smiled. Junior Brother's observation is very sharp. Indeed, there are no cultivators above the True Lake Realm involved. Even the True Lake Realm 7th Order cultivators are not involved. There are very few of them. Firstly, their military ranks are high enough so they don't earn much each month. Secondly, they are also quasi-spirit sea realm cultivators. It's not worth it if there are any casualties in such a battle. Neither side wants to see such a thing happen. Lu Yi nodded slightly, then asked in a seemingly unintentional manner, of the two people fighting, which side is ours? The spear cultivator, I remember his name is Mu Tianxing. He's quite strong. Search. Mu Tianxing was a true Lake Realm 4th Order cultivator, so he was quite strong. What's the name of the other one from Grand Heaven Alliance? I think he's only a 3rd Order cultivator, one level lower than Mu Tianxing, but he's on par with him. His background is obviously stronger. Indeed. Tong Shuyao nodded in agreement. He's probably from a big sect. Suddenly someone said, Senior Sister Tong's eyes are sharp. This person is from Azure Emperor City. Azure Emperor City is a 2nd-grade sect in Grand Heaven Alliance. It's indeed a big sect. Generally speaking, the two sides would exchange their names before the battle, so the one who spoke would know the details of the saber-wielding cultivator because he came earlier. Lu Ye's expression changed slightly, then he asked, What's his name? The cultivator didn't even bother to answer Lu Yi and pretended not to hear him. Tong Shuyao was instantly displeased. Junior brother Tai Bai is asking you a question. Are you deaf? Since she had spoken, the cultivator could only reluctantly say, I think he's called Xiao Xinghe. Xiao Xinghe. Lu Ye's expression changed slightly. He finally understood why this person looked familiar when he saw him. He also finally understood why he felt a strong sense of déjà vu from this person's saber techniques. Because Xiao Xinghe of the Azure the Arch City was the 3rd senior brother. Back then, the Blue Blood sect had fallen into a state of depression. The disciples of the sect had either died or been dismissed, leaving behind only the sect master and a few children. At that time, Shui Yuan was the oldest and the most sensible, so she stayed in the Jade Blood sect and relied on the sect master for survival, one old and one young guarding Devour Mountain. 3rd senior brother Xiao Xinghe was sent to the Alliance sect's Azure the Arch City. 4th senior brother Li Baxian was taken over by eldest senior brother's widow to raise him. In this generation of Jade Blood sect disciples, Lu Yi naturally came into contact with water the most. Next was Li Baxian. Because Li Baxian's spirit orifice was exposed, he stayed at the Shiling Creek battlefield for more than 10 years, which allowed Lu Yeo to come into contact with him. An opportunity. However, Lu Yi had never met 3rd senior brother Xiao Xinghe. Instead, he had met 3rd senior brother's son Xiao Changhe. The reason why he looked familiar was because the father and son had some similarities. The reason why he felt a strong sense of déjà vu was because 3rd senior brother had compiled his own insights into the saber technique into a jade slip and asked Xiao Changhe to pass it to Lu Yi. It could be said that the foundation of Lu Ye's saber technique was the shadow of 3rd senior brother. When Lu Yi was in the Cloud River battlefield, he had thought of looking for 3rd senior brother, but unfortunately there was no way to contact him, so he was quite helpless. But he did not expect to see 3rd senior brother here today, whom he had never met before. Moreover, he was already a 3rd Order true Lake Realm cultivator. The talents of this generation of Jade Blood sect disciples were extremely high. Needless to say, Shui Yuan was already in the Spirit Sea realm. Although Li Baxian had been in the Spirit Creek battlefield for more than 10 years, he had accumulated a lot of experience and made rapid progress. At first, Lu Yi thought that his 3rd senior brother's aptitude was not very good. After all, when Lu Yi went to the Azure the Arch City sect's encampment from the Spirit Creek battlefield, 3rd senior brother seemed to have just entered the Cloud River battlefield. At that time his son Xiao Changhe already had some cultivation. But later, when he chatted with Shui Yuan, he learned that 3rd senior brother's aptitude was not inferior to Li Baxian's. Although he was born rough, he was meticulous and emotional. When he was young, he fell in love with a mortal woman and promised to spend the rest of his life with her, which delayed his cultivation and even caused him to be expelled from Azure the Arch City. Unfortunately, 3rd senior sister was congenitally deficient, and after giving birth to Xiao Changhe, she was plagued by illness. Although 3rd senior brother took good care of her for many years, she eventually passed away. It was not until 3rd senior sister's funeral was arranged that 3rd senior brother returned to Azure the Arch City with Xiao Changhe, kowtowed in front of the sect's entrance for 7 days, and was finally accepted into the sect. When Lu Yi heard about this at that time, he was very emotional. Shui Yuan also went to treat 3rd senior sister in person, but 3rd senior sister's illness was not acquired, but congenitally deficient. If she had no children, she might have been able to live for a few more years, but giving birth to Xiao Changhe had consumed too much of her Yuan Qi, and even Shui Yuan was somewhat helpless. Hearing about it was one thing, seeing it with one's own eyes was another. It was not until this moment that Lu Yi finally confirmed that his third senior brother's talent was indeed stronger than fourth senior brother's, and it could be seen from the speed of his cultivation progress alone. Lu Ye's emotions were surging in his heart, but his expression remained unchanged. Although it was the first time he saw third senior brother, Lu Yi still felt an indescribable sense of familiarity. Not to mention other things, when third senior brother learned that he was a saber user, he immediately sorted out his experience of saber techniques that he had cultivated for many years and entrusted it to his son. Lu Ye's continuous slash and flash from the root came from third senior brother's saber techniques. At this moment, the two people were fighting fiercely, and their spiritual power was surging, and saber light and spear shadows were everywhere. Lu Yi observed for a moment and also saw something. That was, third senior brother had definitely fought more than one battle, because there were some injuries on his body that were not caused by the spear. Obviously he had fought one or even several battles before, but judging from the results he should have won since he could continue to stand here. Even so, he was still evenly matched with the enemy who was a small realm higher than him, and even had the upper hand. If this continued, it would not be difficult to win this battle. Naturally, many of the cultivators on the Myriad Demon Ridge's side also saw this, and their expressions were solemn. Losing the battle and letting the enemy get the rewards was secondary, but with so many people watching the battle, it was true that they had lost face. Because there was no large-scale battle, the soldiers were very concerned about winning or losing such a battle. Mu Tianxing also noticed that the situation was unfavorable to him, and he put on a fighting style of fighting with his life on the line. His spear was like a dragon and his attacks were fierce. Seeing this scene, Xiaoxing had changed his fierce saber aura and steadily stabbed forward. Seeing this, Lu Yi nodded inwardly. This was the most correct way to deal with it. Mu Tianxing became more and more impatient, and his spiritual power surged as he stabbed out with his spear. Xiaoxing took advantage of the opportunity to retreat and avoid the spear, but he also almost hit the cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance who were watching the battle behind him. Under normal circumstances, in the face of such a scene, the spectators would naturally avoid it early to facilitate the battle between the two sides. However, for some reason, the cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance who were watching the battle stood still. One of them even intentionally or unintentionally moved his body, allowing Xiaoxing to bump into him. He immediately raised his hand and patted Xiaoxing's shoulder, shouting, "Be careful." Xiaoxing did not expect that at such a critical moment, one of his own people would secretly make things difficult for him. The other party's seemingly light pat caused his spiritual power to surge. Seeing this, Mu Tianxing's eyes lit up, and he stabbed his spear straight at Xiaoxing's heart. With this spear, life and death would be determined. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed the long sword at his waist, but before he could do anything he saw Xiaoxing's figure slanting. The spear pierced through his shoulder blade, and Xiaoxing slashed out with his saber. Blood spurted out and a head flew out. The headless corpse fell from mid-air. Xiaoxing panted heavily and slowly turned his head. His gaze was cold as he stared at the cultivator from the Grand Heaven Alliance who had just slapped him. He did not say a word, but his eyes were filled with murderous intent. The cultivator from the Grand Heaven Alliance had a jade-like face. His appearance was extraordinary, and his clothes were extremely luxurious. It was obvious that he had an extraordinary background. Even though he was being stared at by Xiaoxing, his expression was indifferent. He only slightly pushed his spiritual power to protect his body. What do you want to do? You have to think carefully. The cultivation that emanated from his body was at the 7th order True Lake realm. Looking around, only Tong Shuyao could compare to him. What's the situation over there? Lu Yi narrowed his eyes and asked. Although what happened just now was not easily noticed, everyone present was a True Lake realm cultivator. Who didn't see it clearly? Many of the cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge were baffled. They did not know why the Grand Heaven Alliance seemed to be fighting among themselves, but they were happy to see it. However, their opponent was killed by Xiaoxing in one slash, so they were somewhat embarrassed. Under normal circumstances, few people would die in a battle here because the difference in strength between the two sides was not too great. Once they realized that they were no match for Xiaoxing, they would admit defeat. Just now Mu Tianxing was too careless. He thought that he had succeeded, but he let his guard down and was killed by Xiaoxing instead. In this way, not only could Xiaoxing obtain more battle merits, he could also obtain Mu Tianxing's storage bag. I don't know. I rarely come here. Tong Shuyao shook her head and turned to look at the cultivator from the Myriad Demon's Ridge who spoke just now. What happened to them? The cultivator from the Myriad Demon's Ridge said, "This Xiao Xinghe doesn't seem to be very popular over there. He might have offended someone." "Who did he offend?" Lu Yi asked. "I don't know. Anyway, recently Xiao Xinghe has often appeared to fight. He seems to be lacking battle merits." Chapter 936. The situation on the field was delicate. Normally, if a cultivator on one side won, it would be very satisfying and cause cheers. However, after the strange incident just now, after Xiao Xinghe killed a strong enemy, he didn't get much cheers. Instead, he was secretly surrounded by a few people led by the True Lake Realm 7th Order cultivator. Some Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators who knew the situation saw this scene and sighed slightly while shaking their heads. Some wanted to stand up for the injustice but were stopped. Xiao Xinghe's Jade Blood Sect's roots in Heaven's Gate were still a little troublesome. Although some people couldn't do anything on the surface, there were some dirty tricks in the dark that were despicable. After a long stare, Xiao Xinghe said lightly, "There won't be a next time." The True Lake Realm 7th Order cultivator snorted softly and said in a voice that others couldn't hear, "If there is, so what? You can try." Xiao Xinghe turned his head and spat out a mouthful of blood. He raised his hand and pulled out the long spear that was inserted into his shoulder blade. He threw it aside and turned around to face the vast lineup of Myriad Demon's Ridge. "Who's next?" Die. As soon as he finished speaking, someone impatiently rushed out and immediately fought with Xiao Xinghe. Although the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivator who rushed out was a Dharma cultivator, he was only a 3rd Order True Lake Realm cultivator, which was even worse than the previous cultivator. He probably wanted to take advantage of Xiao Xinghe's injury, but he didn't expect that Xiao Xinghe's saber would become even more violent due to the grievance in his heart. Xiao Xinghe endured the bombardment of several spirit techniques and rushed forward. His saber slashed down, breaking through the spirit chi protection of the cultivator and sending him flying. The Dharma cultivator was lucky to survive, but with such a serious injury he would probably need to recuperate for a while. Heaven-shaking cheers finally sounded, one after another. After all, only a small portion of people were deliberately targeting Xiao Xinghe. Most people shared a common enemy with him. Seeing his divine might, they were naturally encouraged. The anger in Xiao Xinghe's heart hadn't subsided yet, so he naturally didn't want to leave. He rested the long saber on his shoulder with an unruly posture and a hawk-like gaze. He stared straight ahead. Another one. Many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were furious. Although the fighting tradition here had been going on for many years, and there had been many powerful cultivators. However, it was rare to see someone so arrogant and despotic. Generally speaking, cultivators who had fought 3 rounds in a row would go down to rest. Firstly, it was to give others a chance to fight. Secondly, it was because they had used up too much of their energy. However, Xiao Xinghe had already fought 5 times this year. Out of the 5 cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge, 4 were injured and 1 was killed. If they were to continue losing, the Myriad Devil Ridge would lose all face. Therefore, when Xiao Xinghe's words left his mouth, many 5th and 6th Order True Lake Realm cultivators moved. At this time he couldn't care less about others saying that he was bullying the weak. The key was to win this match. It would be best if he could kill Xiao Xinghe in front of everyone. Only then would he be able to regain his face. However, before these 5th and 6th Order True Lake Realm cultivators could rush out, a figure in a white robe appeared on the battlefield. That person had a long sword in his hand and a gourd hanging from his waist. His cultivation was only at the 3rd Order True Lake Realm, but his movements were faster than anyone else. It could be said that almost at the same time that Xiao Xinghe spoke, he rushed up impatiently. His posture of wanting to snatch the credit was very eye-catching. Everyone from the Myriad Devil Ridge frowned. Grandmaster Tai Bai. Tong Shuyao was also a little dumbfounded. She didn't expect Lu Yi to fight. She brought Lu Yi here to watch the show. She didn't want him to fight at all. However, Lu Yi had already rushed up at this moment, so she couldn't call him back. The Myriad Devil Ridge had already lost face. If she called him back after he had already fought, it would only be more embarrassing. Recalling Lu Ye's previous performances, Tong Shuyao secretly felt relieved. Although Xiao Xinghe's strength was good, he was already injured and had consumed a lot of energy. On the other hand, junior brother Tai Bai had even fought against a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, so it shouldn't be difficult for him to win. Such a good opportunity to make a name for himself was rare. Naturally he couldn't miss it. Maybe he wants to show off since he's new here? Tong Shuyao thought in her heart. She felt that she probably understood Lu Ye's thoughts. Otherwise he wouldn't have rushed up so quickly. Although many of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators present saw Lu Yi for the first time and didn't know his origin, many of them saw Tong Shuyao bringing Lu Yi over. They also saw Tong Shuyao standing side by side with him. They seemed to be very close. So even if they felt indignant at this moment and felt that this kid was going to take advantage of them, they couldn't say anything and just watched the battle silently. In the field, Xiaoxing he couldn't help but look at Lu Yi a few more times. It wasn't because of his handsome appearance, but because his outfit reminded him of Li Baxian. Fourth brother was so flirtatious that he could attract women's hearts. So, those who used swords were not good people. Dark Moon Forest Pass rogue cultivator Li Taibai greets senior brother. Lu Yi cupped his fists and saluted. This senior martial brother was a sincere call. The reason why he rushed out at this time was naturally not to snatch the credit, but because he saw that his third senior brother was a little tired. It was just that he had nowhere to vent his anger, so he continued to stay and fight with the myriad Devil Ridge. But how could the myriad Devil Ridge allow him to continue? If Lu Yi didn't rush out, his third senior brother would have to face a 5th or 6th order True Lake Realm cultivator. These people would definitely try to kill him. With his third senior brother's current state, he might not be able to block them. If he was too slow to admit defeat, who knew what the consequences would be? If he repelled his third senior brother, he would at least have a good grasp of the situation. Xiaoxing surging killing intent was at a loss for what to do. He originally wanted to raise his saber and slash, but since Lu Yi was so courteous, he could only return the greeting. Startling Waves Lake Pass, Azure the Arch City Xiaoxingha. The moment he finished speaking, he pounced towards Lu Yi like a fierce tiger. The murderous intent that he had just restrained was boiling. He was well aware of his own situation. After several consecutive battles, he had consumed a lot of energy. Coupled with the fact that he was suffering from many injuries, he could only fight this last battle. Although this guy called Li Taibai in front of him looked like old four and was quite polite, their positions were different. Naturally, he would not show mercy. If he wanted to win this battle, he had to end it quickly. His third senior brother's saber technique was somewhat similar to Lu Ye's. They were both fierce and unyielding. When his saber power was formed, he would press forward with indomitable will. Lu Yi was all too familiar with this kind of saber power. When the sword rang out, Lu Yi had already summoned his top-grade spirit artifact longsword. He didn't use his flying sword technique, but instead gently thrust it towards Xiaoxing he. Go. Using softness to conquer strength. Imprinted on the Soaring Dragon Realm source, Lu Yi had seen the different styles and methods of different sword cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm. His sword Dao cultivation was even stronger than his saber technique, but he didn't usually have the opportunity to show it. At this moment, as soon as he made his move, many sword cultivators' eyes lit up. Sword cultivators didn't only know how to use flying swords. This kind of close combat method was also the foundation of sword cultivators. Many sword cultivators discovered that this handsome guy who had popped out of nowhere was actually extremely skilled in sword Dao. Xiaoxing he felt extremely uncomfortable because when he slashed out with his invincible saber power, it was as if he had fallen into a quagmire. He couldn't unleash his strength at all. He also had an inconceivable feeling that this guy named Li Taibai in front of him seemed to be very familiar with his methods. Every time his saber power changed, the other party would be able to counter it immediately. His momentum was like a tiger's, but it was weakened by a scorpion. After fighting for less than 30 breaths, Xiaoxing He's saber power completely stagnated. What made him feel even more incredulous was that the enemy in front of him didn't seem to have used his full strength. "Senior brother, please rest," Lu Yi said softly. The long sword in his hand moved forward and accurately pierced through a flaw in Xiaoxing He's saber power. As his spiritual power surged, Xiaoxing He hurriedly retreated. When he stood still again, he was already 30 meters away from Lu Yi. Lu Yi didn't chase after him. He just stood there with one hand holding his sword. "You let me win." The wind blew and his white clothes fluttered. Not only did Tong Shuyao's beautiful eyes light up, but even many female cultivators from both sides couldn't take their eyes off him. After a moment of silence, many cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge cheered as if they had wiped away their previous humiliation. However, many people were still somewhat dissatisfied that Lu Yi didn't kill him or have any intention of chasing after him. The opponents who fought with Xiaoxing He were either dead or injured, but this Li Taibai didn't even hurt a single hair on Xiaoxing He's head. Although he won in the end, it wasn't that satisfying. Xiaoxing He stood where he was and looked at Lu Yi with some confusion. This was because he didn't feel any killing intent from Lu Yi from the beginning to the end. When he first saw Lu Yi rushing over impatiently, He thought that Lu Yi was here to take advantage of him like everyone else. He had already made up his mind to kill this guy first. But now, it seemed that the other party really just wanted to force him back and didn't have any other thoughts. This person is really strange. Xiao Xing, he couldn't figure it out. After pondering for a while, he cupped his fists towards Lu Yi and retreated peacefully. He didn't stay any longer and flew directly towards Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Obviously, he didn't want to get involved in the upcoming battle and wanted to go back to heal his injuries. Lu Yi watched him leave. After a while, he retracted his gaze and looked towards the Grand Heaven Alliance's camp. He smiled slightly. Let's have another one. Xiao Xing, he had said that just now, and now Lu Yi had returned the same words. The difference was that Xiao Xing, he was filled with killing intent when he said it. When he said it, the spring breeze was gentle. Although there was no sound of thunder, it was more powerful and confident. When the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators heard it, they were excited and shouted in unison, "Let's have another one." A figure flashed into the field. After a while, this person retreated with a solemn expression, but he didn't forget to cup his fists towards Lu Yi. Although everyone was in the Third Order True Lake realm, there were differences in their foundations and methods. The time this person lasted under Lu Ye's sword was shorter than Xiao Xing He's. This time, whether it was the Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators or the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators, they were a little surprised. Chapter 937. In the eyes of the cultivators on both sides, Lu Ye's victory over Xiao Xing He was undoubtedly a huge advantage. Xiao Xing He had fought several battles in a row, so no one knew how much strength he could exert against Lu Yi. However, the next opponent was in peak condition and was quickly defeated. It could be seen that Lu Ye's foundation was extraordinary and he wasn't an ordinary True Lake Realm cultivator. Again? In the field, Lu Yi still had a smile on his face. However, the two simple words made many cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance feel embarrassed. Immediately, a True Lake Fourth Order cultivator entered the field. He didn't bother to talk nonsense with Lu Yi and launched a strong attack without waiting for him to stand still. He wanted to catch Lu Yi off guard. After a short while, this True Lake Fourth Order cultivator retreated with an ashamed look. This was because he hadn't lasted long against Lu Yi either. Moreover, he had come with murderous intent, yet Lu Yi had treated him warmly. Just this magnanimity alone made him feel ashamed of his inferiority. After being forced back by Lu Ye's sword, he had to admit that he was no match for Lu Yi. He cupped his hands and left, not bothering with Lu Yi. 3 battles, 3 victories and an easy victory. The myriad Demon Ridge camp once again erupted in cheers. The expressions of many Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators turned solemn. They were encouraged by Xiao Xing He's consecutive victories and killing enemies, but they didn't expect the tables to turn so quickly. The 3 battles had allowed many people to see some clues. Although this cultivator named Li Tai Bai was only in the Third Order True Lake realm, his foundation was extremely strong. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense for him to win so easily. If a Third Order cultivator and a Fourth Order cultivator were no match for him, then they could only send a Fifth Order cultivator. In such a battle, under normal circumstances, the difference in cultivation between the two sides wouldn't be too big. After all, both sides had True Lake Realm cultivators of various levels. If one side sent out a cultivator of a higher level, the other side would naturally have someone to counter. There was only one exception, and that was the current situation. But even so, Grand Heaven Alliance still adhered to a tacit rule, and that was the cultivators who fought had to increase their cultivation level step by step. If a Fourth Order cultivator was defeated, the next to fight would naturally be a Fifth Order cultivator. He was still defeated, but he lasted a little longer. The cultivators from both camps were dumbfounded. At first, they thought that Lu Yi was going to take advantage of Xiao Xinghe. However, judging from the powerful foundation that Lu Yi had displayed, even if Xiao Xinghe was at his peak, he would not be a match for Lu Yi. Therefore, there was no need to take advantage of him. He had come here to make a name for himself. The only thing that comforted the Grand Sky Alliance was that Li Tai Bai only defeated his enemies and did not kill them. He did not seem to have a strong desire to kill. A Fifth Order was no longer his opponent, so only a Sixth Order was left. The deafening cheers from the myriad Demons Ridge subsided. Everyone was nervously watching the situation on the field. They did not know if Li Tai Bai could maintain his undefeated record. One had to know that only the core disciples of the 9 provinces' great sects were capable of surpassing their realm to defeat their enemies. For a Third Order True Lake Realm cultivator to defeat a Fifth Order was already an incredible feat. Although Lu Yi had performed well just now, no one in Myriad Demon Ridge knew whether he could win against the Sixth Order. If he lost, it would be excusable. However, if he won, there was no doubt that Li Taibai's name would resound throughout the Dark Moon Forest after this battle. Even the two sect masters would be rewarded. The Myriad Demons Ridge was nervous, but so were the Grand Sky Alliance cultivators. Although the Grand Sky Alliance cultivators had retreated unscathed in the previous battles and Lu Yi had never killed anyone, a loss was a loss. If they could not win this battle, it would be a disgrace. Let me. As a voice sounded, a young man with a sword box on his back stepped forward. A sword box was similar to a weapon casket. It could store and nurture spirit artifacts. A weapon casket could store and nurture imperial artifacts, while a sword box could store and nurture flying swords. Strictly speaking, Li Baxian's wine gourd was the same as a sword box. However, the wine gourd could not only store and nurture flying swords, it could also store wine. Generally, only the purest sword cultivators would carry a sword box. Hence, from this person's attire, Lu Yi knew that he was a sword cultivator. When he stepped forward, many Grand Sky Alliance cultivators could not help but let out a sigh of relief. It was obvious that they had high hopes for this person. They felt that he could definitely defeat Li Taibai. Beixian Sword Sect Zhang Yulin. He cupped his fists and bowed. He squinted his eyes. Taoist Guan, you should also be a sword cultivator. That's right. Lu Yi took the lead. Then why didn't I see you using flying swords earlier? Lu Yi vaguely understood. This Taoist wants to compete with my flying swords. Zhang Yulin nodded. Please enlighten me. Sure. Lu Yi grinned. As soon as he finished speaking, the long sword in his hand turned into a ray of light and flew towards Zhang Yulin. Zhang Yulin did not move, but the sound of a sword rang. The sword box on his back shook slightly. A ray of sword light slashed out and met Lu Ye's flying sword. With a clank, sparks flew everywhere. The two flying swords collided. What followed was a series of clanking sounds. The two of them each controlled a flying sword and fought endlessly in the field. They were like two dragon shadows. It was a feast for the eyes. The cultivators from both camps were shocked. The strength displayed by Lu Yi was simply too incredible. With his third-order true Lake Realm cultivation, he was actually able to fight evenly with a sixth-order cultivator from the Northern Profound Sword Sect in terms of flying swords. Be careful, Taoist. After a long time, Zhang Yulin shouted. The sword box on his back buzzed again and several rays of light shot out. They swept past the place where the two flying swords clashed and went straight for Lu Yi. Lu Yi was calm. He poured his spirit energy into the sword gourd at his waist. Several rays of sharp sword chi shot out to meet the incoming flying swords and blocked them all. Zhang Yulin raised his brow. He had already realized Lu Ye's strength and no longer hesitated. The sword box on his back buzzed continuously. Sword chi shot out one after another. In just a moment, the hundreds of flying swords inside the sword box had all been shot out. Obviously, Zhang Yulin was going all out. No matter how many flying swords he sent out, Lu Yi would respond with the same amount of sword chi. In an instant, the area where the two were fighting was filled with a sea of sword chi, drowning the two figures. The spectating cultivators on both sides were unable to see the situation clearly for a moment. Until a certain moment, the sword light split, converging to the left and right, turning into two sword dragons. Below the two sword dragons were Zhang Yulin and Lu Yi, who were facing each other in the distance. The moment their eyes met, sparks bloomed in the void. The sword dragons roared and attacked each other. Soon they collided. Sword chi and flying swords clashed. In an instant, the two sword dragons collapsed. Sharp sword chi scattered in all directions. Even the surrounding cultivators had to temporarily avoid it. Many sword chi rushed towards Zhang Yulin. Zhang Yulin's expression was solemn. When he retracted the hundreds of flying swords, he formed a sword array in front of him. As soon as the sword array was formed, the sword chi followed like shadows and poured into the array. Sizzling sounds could be heard incessantly. When the dust settled, Zhang Yulin's sword array had been broken. Blood even flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He was not injured by the sword chi, but he had consumed too much of his strength and suffered some internal injuries. Lu Ye's face was slightly pale and he was gasping for breath. Obviously he had consumed a lot of his strength. The whole field was silent. Everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. The hearts of many Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators sank. After a long while, an unacceptable voice came out from Zhang Yulin's mouth. I lost. Roars like beasts came out from the Myriad Demon Ridge camp. Soon, it was continuous, venting the excitement and joy in their hearts. A third-order True Lake Realm Cultivator against a sixth-order True Lake Realm Cultivator, but the third-order True Lake Realm Cultivator won. Moreover, the sixth-order True Lake Realm Cultivator was not an ordinary sixth-order True Lake Realm Cultivator. He was a powerful sword cultivator from the North Profound Sword sect. He was an existence that could kill enemies above his realm. But such a person was still defeated by Li Tai Bai. This was unbelievable, but it really happened right in front of everyone's eyes. How could the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators not be excited by such a scene? The frustration and grievance they felt from Xiao Xinghe's consecutive victories were swept away. At this moment they were elated and elated. One had to know that the few people Xiao Xinghe fought were almost as strong as him. At most they were one minor realm higher than him. However, Li Tai Bai's opponents were stronger than the previous one. Now he even defeated a sixth-order True Lake Realm cultivator. The effect of this was even greater than Xiao Xinghe's. Senior brother Zhang. Someone exclaimed, unable to accept such a result. They thought that with Zhang Yulin's appearance, defeating Li Tai Bai would be a cinch. Who knew that Zhang Yulin was not his opponent? Who else could be his opponent? Amidst the joy and sorrow, Lu Yi took a deep breath, seemingly calming the rolling blood in his chest. He held his sword in his hand and raised it slightly, pointing at a certain spot in Grand Heaven Alliance's camp. A smile appeared on his face again. One more. His words were earth-shattering. The cheers of the myriad Demon Ridge came to an abrupt end. Everyone looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. Tang Shuyao, whose eyes were full of splendor, suddenly came back to her senses and hurriedly said, "Junior brother Tai Bai, you've done well. Come back quickly." He defeated a sixth-order True Lake Realm cultivator. Isn't that good enough? 5 wins in 5 battles. If this goes on, Clean Heaven Alliance will have no one to fight. Moreover, Tang Shuyao also saw that Lu Yi had consumed a lot of energy in the previous battle. If he encountered another powerful opponent, he might not be able to win. Right now, the best choice was to retreat at the critical moment instead of continuing to fight. Immediately, many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators tried to persuade him because they found that the direction Lu Ye's sword was pointing at was where the only 7th-order True Lake Realm cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance was. That person was the guy who had a little conflict with Pu Xinghe before. Lu Yi naturally paid attention to the many persuasions of the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators. His forceful appearance this time was not just to protect Pu Xinghe. He only had one goal from the beginning to the end. That was the guy who made things difficult for Xiao Xinghe just now. The myriad Demon Ridge was too far away from Grand Heaven Alliance, so he didn't hear what that person said before, nor did he understand what exactly happened over there. However, Lu Yi had already developed his divine sense. Under the perception of his divine sense, everything just now did not escape his detection. Chapter 938. Lu Yi clearly saw that when Xiao Xinghe retreated, that person deliberately blocked his path. He heard the conversation between the two even more clearly. That person wanted to kill with a borrowed knife. If Xiao Xinghe wasn't strong enough and tilted his body at the most crucial moment, he would have been pierced through the heart by now. Lu Yi naturally knew that Grand Heaven Alliance wasn't a monolithic alliance. Where there were people, there would be disputes. This was unavoidable and would not be eliminated just because they were in the same camp. Grand Heaven Alliance was like this, so was myriad Demon Ridge. Previously, the few True Lake Realm cultivators under Lin Yu's command were all killed. When he went to Grand Heaven City to relay the order, he also encountered many dangers on the way. But fighting was fighting and some things couldn't be done too far. To kill with a borrowed knife so blatantly, that person's intentions were unforgivable. Lu Yi didn't know what grudges or conflicts his third senior brother had with that person. It would have been fine if he didn't see him, but since he saw him, he naturally had to stand up for his third senior brother. Li Tai Bai happened to be a myriad Demon Ridge cultivator, so it was convenient for him to do this. Search. You want to challenge me? The 7th Order cultivator looked at Lu Yi in surprise. He didn't expect this myriad Demon Ridge cultivator to be so daring. Other than you, is there anyone else who can fight? Lu Yi looked at him indifferently. He won 5 out of 5 battles. Even Zhang Yulin, who came from the North Profound Sword sect, was defeated. The only person stronger than Zhang Yulin in Grand Heaven Alliance was the 7th Order cultivator. Lu Ye's previous actions were just to consolidate his strength step by step. At this moment he revealed his true intentions. And in this situation, that person couldn't refuse Lu Ye's challenge. Otherwise he wouldn't be able to pass his own test. Very good. That cultivator's eyes turned cold. Anger surged in his heart as he faintly felt that he was being looked down upon. "Senior brother Tan, teach him a lesson," a cultivator beside him said. "Of course. I will teach him a lesson." Cultivator Tan sneered and walked out slowly. "Junior brother Taibai, how could you be so reckless?" Tong Shuyao was furious. She didn't expect Lu Yi to be so greedy. Beyond the sixth order was the 4 realms of cultivators, and in each realm there were 4 or 7 barriers. Once one broke through, one's strength would increase greatly. Although there was only a single minor realm between the 6th order and the 7th order, there was a huge difference in strength. This was also the reason why there were very few cultivators above the 7th order participating in this battle. If it weren't for bringing Lu Yi here to watch the fun, Tong Shuyao wouldn't have come here. As for those at the 8th or 9th order, they would never appear on such an occasion. As such, even if Lu Yi could defeat a 6th order sword cultivator, he might not be able to defeat a 7th order sword cultivator. Not to mention, Lu Yi had obviously consumed a lot of his strength in the battle just now, so no one knew how much strength he could exert at this moment. Tong Shuyao couldn't wait to knock Lu Yi out and take him away, but if she interfered in this kind of matter, it was very likely that it would trigger a direct confrontation between the cultivators of the 2 camps. If they resisted, it wouldn't be as simple as 1 or 2 people dying. If such an unforeseen event really happened, no one would be able to bear the responsibility. Many of the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators also looked at Lu Yi nervously and worriedly. Lu Yi didn't expect that he, the infamous sect exterminator of the Myriad Demon Ridge camp, would have such worries. On the contrary, there were some people from Grand Heaven Alliance who couldn't wait to get rid of him. Some things in the world were really unpredictable, but this didn't diminish the determination in his heart. Today's situation was something he had encountered, so there must be many more that he hadn't encountered yet. Third senior brother might be able to escape this calamity, but he might not be able to escape more. So, there was only one way to ensure third senior brother's safety. The cultivator surnamed Tan stood 10 meters in front of Lu Yi. For a true Lake Realm cultivator, such a distance was extremely dangerous. He wasn't afraid because his cultivation was 4 minor realms higher than Lu Ye's. Even if Lu Ye's performance was extremely good, he still felt that he could defeat Lu Yi. Lu Yi still cupped his fists politely. Dark Moon Forest Pass Rogue Cultivator Li Tai Bai. No matter what, he had to figure out this guy's background. A true Lake Realm 7th Order cultivator couldn't act like that. There must be someone behind him, most likely his master. The cultivator surnamed Tan smiled faintly. Although he couldn't wait to kill Lu Yi, he didn't want to lose his manners in front of everyone, so he casually returned the greeting. Heavenly Yuan Sect, Tan Shu. Heavenly Yuan Sect. One of the top 10 first-grade sects in the War Province. As early as when he had not yet joined the sect, a woman named Yu Shaodai had told him this in the Evil Moon Valley. 1 palace, 2 temples, 3 sects and 4 sects. It referred to the top 10 first-grade sects in the War Province. 1 palace referred to Blue Cloud Palace, 2 temples referred to Sen Luo Hall, and Abyss Hong Hall. 3 sects referred to Vitality Sect, Green Jade Sect and Luo Sheng Sect. The 4 sects referred to Everlasting Sect, Crimson Moon Sect, North Profound Sword Sect and Heavenly Yuan Sect. Among them, 5 were Grand Heaven Alliance and 5 were Myriad Demon Ridge. Later, Lu Yi found out that Heavenly Yuan Sect was originally not a first-grade sect, but a second-grade sect. However, because of the decline of Jade Blood Sect, it was promoted to a first-grade sect. In other words, Heavenly Yuan Sect filled the gap of Jade Blood Sect, so this sect's foundation was weaker than other first-grade sects. However, it was much stronger than second-grade sects. In any case, the current Heavenly Yuan Sect was considered a first-grade sect that had been recognized by Tianji. There were also many experts in the sect. Lu Yi thought about it. Since he started cultivating, he didn't seem to have any dealings with the people of Heavenly Yuan Sect. His heart suddenly felt at ease. Don't talk nonsense. Don't worry, I'll give you a quick death. Tan Shu came from an extraordinary background and had a good foundation. He naturally had the capital to do things. He was challenged by Lu Yi in front of everyone with killing intent. Lu Yi smiled. I just want to say something to you. What? As Tan Shu spoke, he noticed his spirit weapon. This guy was also a weapon cultivator who used a saber. Looking at the flowing light on his long saber, it was obvious that it was a magic weapon. It was a magic tool and it wasn't an ordinary magic tool. There won't be a next time. Lu Yi said softly in a voice that only the two of them could hear. What? Tan Shu obviously didn't understand. However, in the next moment, his expression changed greatly because accompanied by a buzzing sound, sword chi that covered the heavens and the earth suddenly suffused out. Piercingly cold sword insight and killing intent enveloped him as if they were material. The enemy in front of him swept away his previous decadent state and became ferocious and terrifying. The aura coming from his body was unprecedentedly strong. A trivial third-order true lake realm cultivator actually made his heart palpitate at this moment. He suddenly realized that the enemy in front of him had not used his full strength in the previous battles. Even in the previous battle with Zhang Yulin he had held back. But now he was going all out against him. This guy is targeting me? How did I offend him? And what did he mean by there won't be a next time? While many thoughts flashed through his mind, Tan Shu was still calm. He was a 7th-order true lake realm cultivator after all. His background wasn't any lower than Zhang Yulin's, and his strength was outstanding. So, although he was caught off guard by Lu Yi, he still didn't panic. However, at this moment he felt a sharp pain in his mind. Divine sense. Tan Shu's face paled. He had faced the power of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator head-on before and had also been swept by the aftermath of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator's divine sense attack. Naturally, he knew what was happening to him at this moment. Is there a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator hiding nearby? He was shocked. Although he was wearing an artifact that could protect his soul, it was the same as Lu Ye's golden lock. Its effect wasn't very good and could only resist a little. He thought that there was a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator hiding nearby who was secretly attacking him, but he didn't know that this divine sense attack came from Lu Yi. This was also the first time Lu Yi had used his divine sense to attack an enemy after forming the divine lake. Although he wasn't afraid of a 7th-order true lake realm cultivator, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. However, if he used his divine sense attack it would be a different story. So Lu Yi went all out and almost instantly squeezed his divine sense dry. Suddenly encountering such an accident, Tan Shu's spirit chi dissipated and his pupils dilated. Driven by his instinct, the saber he slashed at Lu Yi became soft. Powerless. Perhaps it was the final radiance of the setting sun, or perhaps it was the stimulation of a great crisis, but at the moment when he was about to die, his mind became unprecedentedly clear. He finally understood the meaning of Lu Ye's words. After he secretly attacked Xiao Xinghe said to him, "Don't worry. There won't be a next time." And he replied, So what? So before he attacked this Li Tai Bai said to him, "There won't be a next time." He was standing up for Xiao Xinghe? What? He couldn't figure it out anymore. Boundless sword light surged and completely drowned him. When the sword light dissipated, everyone was stunned and looked at the situation in the field with their mouths agape. A lifeless corpse covered in blood fell from the sky. Everyone's gaze followed the falling corpse. When the corpse fell heavily to the ground and broke into pieces, everyone's heart seemed to have fallen to the ground. It fell to the ground. Many cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance were in disbelief. Many cultivators from Myriad Demon's Ridge were also in disbelief. Just now, when the sword light surged, no one saw how Lu Yi and Tan Shu fought, but in just a short moment, life and death had been decided. And the one who died was Tan Shu, a 7th-order true lake realm cultivator. On the other hand, although Lu Ye's face was pale and his body was on the verge of collapse, he was unscathed. Is he that strong? When Tan Shu went up, no one thought that Lu Yi could win. Even so, Lu Yi had brought great glory to Myriad Demon's Ridge. And now even greater glory had come. 6 battles, 6 victories, and the enemies he defeated were all higher in cultivation than the previous one. There was no lack of first-grade sects among them. In the last battle he killed a 7th-order true lake realm cultivator, a full 4 minor realms above him. Such a dreamlike thing that could only be heard in legends happened right under their noses, making everyone feel as if they were in a dream. It wasn't until a cry of alarm that everyone's mind was pulled back. Senior brother Tan. The few people who had followed Tan Shu earlier cried out in grief and rushed out. Some rushed angrily towards Lu Yi, while others rushed towards Tan Shu's corpse on the ground. The scene was chaotic for a moment. Chapter 939. When the cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance made their move, Tong Shuyao had already blocked in front of Lu Yi. Spiritual energy surged around her and her eyes were cold. Fortunately, the cultivator who pounced towards Lu Yi still had some sense. He immediately stopped when he saw Tong Shuyao. However, their abnormal actions had already alerted many cultivators from Myriad Demon's Ridge and affected the nerves of the entire Grand Heaven Alliance camp. In an instant, the cultivators from both sides surged their spiritual energy as they glared at each other. The situation was extremely tense. Lu Ye's face was pale. This was the first time he used his divine sense to fight an enemy. He used too much strength and the energy in his divine pool was almost completely drained. This kind of injury could only be healed with soul-cleansing water. It would take a few days for him to recover on his own. However, if he didn't do that, he wasn't confident that he could kill Tan Shu instantly. After all, Tan Shu was a 7th order true Lake Realm cultivator. The difference in their cultivation was obvious. Once he noticed something, all he had to do was admit defeat and Lu Yi wouldn't be able to kill him anymore. This little sacrifice was worth it after all. Is Grand Heaven Alliance a sore loser? You're making a big fuss just because one person died? Someone yelled. As soon as he said that, many cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance had an unnatural expression. In the battles here there would often be deaths, but there had never been such a large-scale confrontation. For example, when Xiao Xinghe chopped off his opponent's head, no one from Myriad Demon's Ridge intervened. They only watched silently. However, now that Tan Shu died, their reaction was so extreme. Naturally, they were unreasonable. However, the current situation was mainly caused by the few cultivators who followed Tan Shu. The remaining cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance only reacted instinctively. If Grand Heaven Alliance can't afford to lose, then let's fight here. My Myriad Demon's Ridge isn't afraid of you, someone said. That's right. The rules of this battle have been maintained for many years. The life and death of the combatants is up to fate and no one else is allowed to interfere. If Grand Heaven Alliance insists on breaking the rules, it's up to you. However, I wonder what kind of evaluation people will give to you in the future when they talk about what happened today. I'm afraid they think that their lives are precious while ours are worthless. Everyone was shouting at the same time, and the situation was getting out of control. At the critical moment, Tong Shuyao shouted, "Shut up!" Her martial uncle was the past lord of Dark Moon Forest Pass and possessed extraordinary strength. He was also quite popular in Dark Moon Forest Pass and was the only 7th order cultivator here. With this shout, none of the Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators dared to disrespect him and immediately shut their mouths. Tong Shuyao glanced at the front coldly and said, "If Haoyan Alliance wants to fight, we'll keep you company until the end. However, if you do that, there won't be any more battles here in the future, and there won't be any other place to earn battle merits. I don't think you guys want that, right? It's common for Dozhan to be killed. He can only blame himself for not being skilled enough. If you don't want to fight, then retreat immediately. Today's matter ends here." As soon as he finished speaking, many Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators cupped their fists and left. None of the cultivators from the 2 camps in the 9 regions were afraid of fighting. However, as Tong Shuyao said, no one wanted to fight here and break the rules that had been maintained for many years. What's more, Myriad Demon Ridge's morale was high now, and Tong Shuyao, a 7th order cultivator, was in charge. If they really fought, Grand Heaven Alliance would definitely suffer. Anyone with a bit of rationality wouldn't start a conflict with Myriad Demon Ridge at this time. With someone taking the lead and someone following, a large number of Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators soon left. Even the few cultivators who had been following Tan Shu could only take Tan Shu's corpse and leave in a hurry when they saw that things weren't going well. Looking at the direction where the Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators left, the Myriad Demon Ridge camp suddenly burst into loud cheers. Many pairs of eyes looked in the direction where Lu Yi was. The battles here had been going on for many years. It could be said that regardless of whether it was day or night, there would always be cultivators fighting here to earn battle merits and improve their skills. However, such a thing that had been going on for many years had come to an end today. To a certain extent, it could be considered as suppressing Grand Heaven Alliance. This time, many Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators naturally respected Lu Yi, the initiator of all this. What's more, Lu Yi fought 6 battles in a row today. It could be said that it was an eye-opener for them, especially the last battle. No one knew what happened, but the result was right in front of them. A 3rd order true Lake Realm cultivator and a 7th order true Lake Realm cultivator were determined in an instant. The one who died was a 7th order true Lake Realm cultivator. No one would believe that Lu Yi could kill an enemy 4 minor realms higher than him if it didn't happen right in front of their eyes. It could be foreseen that this rogue cultivator named Li Tai Bai would definitely be valued by the 2 Mountain Pass Lords in the future. When he matured in the future, he would definitely become a foundation for Myriad Demon Ridge. Previously, when Lu Yi came with Tong Shuyao, no one paid attention to him. Some were even secretly jealous of him, but now, it seemed that they were short-sighted. Such a character would definitely be famous in the 9 provinces in the future. Many concerned gazes looked over, and the most concerned one was naturally Tong Shuyao. "Junior brother Tai Bai, are you alright?" The main reason was that Lu Ye's face was frighteningly pale. He seemed to be enduring great pain and his expression was somewhat hideous. Hearing this, he shook his head slightly. "I'm fine. I used a forbidden technique and consumed a lot of energy. Senior Sister Tong, please take me back." Tong Shuyao quickly took out her flying spirit tool and flew Lu Yi in the direction of Dark Moon Forest Pass. At the same time, she didn't forget to tell the myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who still wanted to continue, disperse. Looking in the direction the two left, someone secretly praised, "Senior Sister Tong really has good eyes." They didn't know where she found this person. How could a rogue cultivator have such a powerful background? The myriad Demon Ridge cultivators hadn't returned to Dark Moon Forest Pass yet, but the news had already spread. The first reaction of many cultivators who heard this was disbelief. It was impossible. However, as more and more news came back, many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators were dumbfounded. This was because what they thought was impossible had actually just happened. Many cultivators from both sides had witnessed it with their own eyes. By the time Tong Shuyao brought Lu Yi back to Dark Moon Forest Pass, more than half of the cultivators in the pass had already learned of this matter. Some even came out early to welcome them, just to see Lu Ye's true face. With one look, they all secretly praised this person's extraordinary temperament. He was a dragon among men. A moment later, Lu Yi entered his room and activated the defensive array. He took out a drop of soul-cleansing water from his storage bag and swallowed it. Only then did he feel much better. He stole Heaven's secrets to replenish his spirit power while reviewing the many gains and losses of today's battle. This was because ever since he reached True Lake stage, he hadn't fought anyone seriously. Most of the time he was tempering himself in the attribute realm. The only time he fought with an enemy was when he was with the Law Department's Enforcement Hall Team A3 against a Spirit C stage cultivator. It couldn't be considered a serious fight. Although he won today's battle easily, there were many things he needed to reflect on. Especially now that he wasn't a weapon cultivator but a sword cultivator, there were many things he needed to reflect on. And third, senior brother. Why did Tan Shu and his group want to make things difficult for him? They even wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife? He originally wanted to ask Shui Yuan, but if he really did ask, there were many things he couldn't explain, so he could only give up. When he had the chance in the future, he would go to Shocking Waves Lake Pass and see for himself. Heavenly Prime Sect. Although it replaced Jade Blood Sect as a rank sect, it was still a large sect. A large sect shouldn't do things like this. Su Shu and his group wanted to make things difficult for Xiao Xinghe. Was it the intention of the entire Heavenly Prime Sect, or was it someone else's secret instruction? If it was the latter, then it was understandable. Cultivators in the same camp had grudges against each other. But if it was the former, then it was a little too much. What about Azure the Arch City? Did they not know what happened to their own disciples? Or was there nothing they could do even if they knew? The water in the 9 states was much murkier than the Cloud River battlefield and the Spirit Stream battlefield. Some things weren't black and white. He still remembered what the sect master had said to him when he first joined the Jade Blood sect. There was no good or evil in the law, and people were divided into good and evil. Grand Heaven Alliance didn't lack people with evil natures, but Myriad Devil Ridge also had people with noble morals. When dealing with people, different standpoints would lead to different perspectives when looking at problems. Take himself for example. In Myriad Devil Ridge, he was the heinous sect destroyer Yi, one of the 3 disasters of Spirit Stream battlefield. But in Grand Heaven Alliance, he was a rising star and the future hope of Jade Blood sect. There were many things that Lu Yi couldn't understand, but he was too lazy to think about it. At the same time, Tong Shuyao came to a sleeping chamber. The room was decorated in a feminine style. It was Lin Yu's residence in Dark Moon Forest Pass. Lin Yu was waiting for her. Seeing Lin Yu, Tong Shuyao exclaimed excitedly, Master Ant, let me tell you, that junior brother Tai Bai is too powerful. I've heard about it. Is it true or is it exaggerated? Lin Yu asked. When she received the news, she was about to send a message to Tong Shuyao to ask about the situation in detail. She didn't expect Tong Shuyao to immediately come to her with the good news. What did you hear, Master Ant? Tong Shuyao asked. Lin Yu was unmarried and had no children. Hence, she had always treated Tong Shuyao as her own daughter. She spoiled her a lot, so Tong Shuyao was not reserved in front of her. Lin Yu glared at her and said, You don't need to know what I heard. Tell me what you saw. Tong Shuyao responded with an "oh," then began to vividly describe what she had seen and heard today. Of course, she didn't exaggerate anything and was basically telling the truth. However, because of her preconceived notions in her description, Lu Yi ended up being a little more carefree and unrestrained. "You're not lying to me?" Even though she heard Tong Shuyao say it with her own ears, Lin Yu still found it hard to believe. It wasn't that her hair was long and her knowledge was short, it was just too incredible. "It's true." Tong Shuyao's expression was serious and she almost swore a heavenly secret oath. "Good." Lin Yu revealed a smile. "My Demon Ridge has a successor. No, my sect has a successor." The sect that Lin Yu and Tong Shuyao came from was a second-grade sect. However, in recent years there had been a shortage of new disciples. There were a few disciples in the new generation. However, the new generation of disciples had all been killed by sect destroyer Yi. After hearing Lu Ye's performance today, Lin Yu immediately had the idea of accepting him as a disciple. Chapter 940. Originally, a large sect wouldn't pay much attention to a rogue cultivator in the True Lake realm because they didn't lack one or two True Lake realm cultivators. Taking in such a rogue cultivator wouldn't be able to nurture his loyalty to the sect. It would be better to nurture some little kids without any foundation. At the very least, these little kids would be more malleable and would have a greater sense of belonging to the sect. However, Lu Ye's performance today had undoubtedly moved Lin Yu. Most importantly, he wasn't an ordinary rogue cultivator, but a rogue cultivator from the Peerless Continent. He hadn't been in the 9 regions for long and didn't know much about the situation in the 9 regions. He was probably at a loss about his future. If she were to recruit him now, it would be easy to get Kai to submit. As for his loyalty, it could be nurtured slowly in the future. She didn't need to check his background. Originally, when Lin Yu was in the 10,000 Demon City, she had already sent out a message to ask someone to check Li Taibai's background. At the very least, she wanted to know if Li Taibai was from the Peerless Continent. If he was a spy sent by the Grand Heaven Alliance, or if he was recruited by the Grand Heaven Alliance in advance and arranged to come to the 10,000 Demon Ridge, she would be implicated if something happened in the future. However, today, Li Taibai killed a true Lake Realm 7th Order cultivator from the Grand Heaven Alliance in front of many cultivators from both camps. This way she could be sure that he wasn't related to the Grand Heaven Alliance. Otherwise, why would he kill someone in front of so many people? He killed someone from the Grand Heaven Alliance, so no matter who he was in the past, he could only be a member of the 10,000 Demon Ridge. Using such a person was reassuring. When Tong Shuyao heard Lin Yu's words, she was delighted. "Martial Ant wants to recruit him into our sect? What do you think?" Lin Yu looked at Tong Shushan. Good. Tong Shuyao nodded her head like a chicken pecking at rice. She couldn't wait and said eagerly, "I'll go talk to him. If he can be recruited into our sect, then our relationship will be closer. Our interactions in the future will be smoother." "Don't be hasty. This person isn't as simple as he looks. It might not be useful if you go rashly." Lin Yu waved her hand. "Martial Ant's meaning?" Tong Shuyao didn't quite understand. "Silly girl." Lin Yu looked at her. He sighed and felt that his martial nephew was too naive. Or rather, he only saw the brilliance on Li Taibai and couldn't see anything else. He wanted to give him some advice. "Why do you think he killed that man from Haoyan Alliance today?" Tong Shuyao's eyes. "What? Show your might," Lin Yu said confidently as if she had seen through Lu Ye's plan. Tong Shuyao's Lin Yu's explanation. Lin Yu explained to her, he won 6 out of 6 battles, but in the first 5 battles he only forced his opponents to retreat and didn't even hurt them. However, in the last battle he killed his opponent with a thunderous strike. I don't know what method he used to kill his opponent. It's obvious that he was deliberately showing off his strength. He didn't kill anyone before because he wanted his opponents to lower their guard. Martial uncle, you mean? Junior apprentice brother Taibai's initial target was the dead Tan Shu? Lin Yu took the lead. You're the most powerful one in the Wanmo Ridge. Tan Shu is the most powerful one in the Grand Heaven Alliance. Since he wants to show off, it's best to use the most powerful one. In the first 5 battles he only retreated and didn't kill. It was all on purpose. Until the last battle he just came to the 9 states and was brought here by me. With today's power it'll be easier for him to show it in the future. Diske, this kid is quite shrewd. Be careful when you interact with him. Be careful. He's not as simple as he looks. Tong Shuyao was confused. She hesitated and said, could it be that junior brother Taibai knew Tan Ma's power and didn't dare to hold back, so he killed him? Junior brother consumed a lot of energy. He's already in seclusion to recover. Even if I go, I won't be able to see him. This? Lin Yu laughed and shook her head. Originally, she had some sympathy for Tong Shuyao, who had taken a fancy to Li Taibai. From Bai Quan's point of view, Li Taibai was not particularly outstanding except for his handsome appearance. He could only be said to be barely presentable. There were plenty of young talents like him in the 10,000 Devil Ridge. Even their sect had a few. Tong Shuyao didn't recognize people based on their faces. She would be at a disadvantage in the future. But now her impression was different. If Tong Shuyao really liked that kid, she could try to matchmake them. At that time he would be the son-in-law of their sect. It didn't matter whether they accepted him or not. Of course it would be best if they could accept him, lest other sects take advantage of him. That might be possible, but even if he really only fought to a draw with Tan Shu or even lost, no one would underestimate him. But he just had to kill Tan Shu. Clearly he also knew that only by killing the strongest would the effect be the best. Tong Shuyao fell into deep thought as she recalled everything that Lu Yi had done today. She suddenly realized that it might really be as her martial uncle had said. Everything that Lu Yi had done today was done intentionally, and he had been advancing step by step. From the very beginning his target had been Tan Shu. Lin Yu's mind was very sharp. Her deduction of Lu Yi's actions was mostly correct, but the motive was wrong. But she didn't know that Lu Yi only wanted to stand up for her third senior brother. He didn't want to show off. If he hadn't seen how his third senior brother was treated and was worried about his safety in the future, he wouldn't have been in the limelight. To him now, keeping a low profile was the right thing to do. At the very least, after killing Tan Shu, there would be one less person who would make things difficult for his third senior brother in the future. Moreover, Tan Shu wanted to kill him with a borrowed knife, but he didn't succeed. Lu Yi didn't have any psychological burden after killing him. It's understandable that he has his own thoughts. No matter what, my 10,000 Devil Ridge finally has someone who can fight. Lin Yu smiled. Haoyan Alliance has Lu Yi, and my 10,000 Devil Ridge has Li Taibai. I wonder who will be stronger if the two of them meet. Among this generation of cultivators, although the two camps had produced many talented cultivators, there was no one else who could be as dazzling as Lu Yi. Originally, when Lan Zi appeared in the 10,000 Devil Ridge, many Purple Sea Realm cultivators placed their hopes on her, hoping that she could suppress Lu Yi. In the end, things didn't go as planned. In the Spirit Stream battlefield, her ranking on the Spirit Stream list was lower than Lu Yi's. In the Cloud River battlefield, her ranking in the Cloud River battle was also lower than Lu Yi's. Lan Zi couldn't be counted on, but there was hope for Li Taibai. Based on his performance today, he wasn't inferior to Lu Yi by much. Lin Yu could almost foresee that when the two of them grew up, there would be a fierce battle that would shake the world. Yao, follow him for the next few days and don't let too many people interact with him. If there's a suitable opportunity, ask him if he's willing to join our sect. Jiu Lin Yu instructed. She believed that the news of today's incident would spread very quickly. At that time she wouldn't be the only one who had designs on Li Taibai. Fortunately she was close to him. If others wanted to poach him they would have to see if she agreed or not. I know. Don't worry, Martial Ant. I won't let anyone snatch him away. Tong Shuyao was sometimes silly but sometimes she was very shrewd. This time she understood the meaning of Lin Yu's words. As she spoke she rushed out, obviously preparing to look for Lu Yi. But when he left the door, he remembered that today's battle and the incident with Grand Preceptor Taibai had caused no one to go to the mountain pass, which had been a tradition for many years, for several days in a row. The place of battle that used to be bustling with activity was now deserted and empty. 2 days later, a figure rushed into the Dark Moon Forest Pass and hurriedly went to a hall. This was the Dark Moon Forest Pass's council hall. Lin Yu usually worked here to deal with the various matters in the mountain pass. She wasn't the only one in the hall. There were other cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge. There were many matters in the mountain pass that she didn't need to deal with personally. Naturally, there would be people to help her. These people were considered her right-hand men. When the figure rushed into the hall, many cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge hurriedly stood up and bowed. Greetings, Great Mountain Pass Lord. Small Book Pavilion. Under normal circumstances, every mountain pass had at least 2 Purple Sea Realm cultivators overseeing it. They were divided into Great Mountain Pass Lord and Small Mountain Pass Lord. The difference in size was based on the cultivation level. Although Lin Yu was the Pass Lord of the Dark Moon Forest Pass, it was actually a small mountain pass. When the figure rushed into the hall, many cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge hurriedly stood up and bowed. Greetings, Great Mountain Pass Lord. Under normal circumstances, every mountain pass had at least 2 Purple Sea Realm cultivators overseeing it. They were divided into Great Mountain Pass Lord and Small Mountain Pass Lord. The difference in size was based on the cultivation level. Although Lin Yu was the Pass Lord of the Dark Moon Forest Pass, she was actually a Small Mountain Pass Lord. The man who came was Jianghu, the Great Mountain Pass Lord of the Dark Moon Forest Pass. His cultivation level was one level higher than Lin Yu's, at the 7th Order Spirit Sea Realm. Previously, he had some matters to attend to and hadn't been in the mountain pass for the past 2 days. At this moment he rushed back with an anxious look. Lin Yu clicked her tongue in wonder. "Senior brother, what happened?" Zhang Kuan didn't beat around the bush and hurriedly said, "I heard some rumors." "What is senior brother referring to?" "A rogue cultivator called Li Tai Bai came from the mountain pass. He killed a 7th Order cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance as a 3rd Order True Lake Realm cultivator." "Is it true?" "Senior brother, do you think it's true?" Lin Yu smiled faintly and didn't give a direct answer. She was wondering if this guy had taken a liking to Li Tai Bai and wanted to snatch him away from her. Although she was close to Li Tai Bai, she had also instructed Tong Shuyao to follow Li Tai Bai and not interact with too many people. However, according to Tong Shuyao's report, Li Tai Bai had been in seclusion to heal his injuries for the past 2 days and hadn't come out. Tong Shuyao didn't even have the chance to look for him. "Junior sister, I'm not joking with you. I don't have any other intentions. Tell me the truth. Is this true?" When Lin Yu first heard about it, he didn't believe it either. However, as he received more information, he realized that it might be true. If it was true, then the situation wasn't good. "It is true." "What?" Seeing that Zhang Kuan's expression wasn't right, Lin Yu didn't beat around the bush anymore. "Is the person who was killed called Tan Shu?" Zhang Kuan asked again. "I think that's his name." Lin Yu thought for a moment and nodded. After the incident 2 days ago, everyone at the mountain pass was talking about Li Tai Bai's name. Who would care about the person who was killed? Lin Yu only knew about Tan Shu's name after listening to Tong Shuyao's detailed explanation. "Oh no." Zhang Kuan's expression changed and he said anxiously, "Quick, send the order to prepare for battle. Click to download the app on this site. Massive free reading." Chapter 941. Senior Apprentice Brother, what's wrong? Lin Yu's expression changed. Zhang Kuan's expression was serious. "You only know that the person who was killed is called Tan Shu, but do you know who's behind him?" Lin Yu frowned. No matter who's behind him, Haotian Alliance won't ignore the big picture just because one person died in battle, right? All these years, the 2 sides of the mountain pass have suffered many casualties. Many people died in battle, and many of them were disciples from low-rank sections. No one made a big fuss because of this. "Senior Apprentice Brother, I know that Tan Shu is a disciple of Heaven Yuan sect, but what's his background? Why are you acting like you're facing a great enemy?" Zhang Kuan said, "Since you know that he's a disciple of Heaven Yuan sect, can't you think of one person?" Lin Yu thought for a while. "You mean Yu Huajin, that old B*TCH? Is Tan Shu related to her?" Sigh. Zhang Kuan sighed. "Junior Apprentice Sister, you reached the Spirit Ocean realm late, so you might not know. Yu Huajin's husband's surname is Tan, and they have a son. It's said that her son was very talented and showed his talent a few decades ago. However, because of some mistakes, he was killed by Feng Wujiang in front of the army. Tan Shu was her son. When she died, Tan Shu was still in her mother's womb. That means Yu Huajin is Tan Shu's grandmother?" Zhang Kuan said seriously, "Do you understand now?" Lin Yu's expression changed. Zhang Kuan said, "Because of what happened that year, that old thing Yu Huajin harbors a grudge against the Jade Blood sect. Even though they are both from the Grand Heaven Alliance, she has been suppressing the Jade Blood sect openly and secretly. It is said that the deaths of many Jade Blood sect disciples were related to her. Unfortunately, the Jade Blood sect doesn't have any concrete evidence. Coupled with the fact that the Jade Blood sect has declined, they can only leave it unsettled. Yu Huajin only has one son who was killed by Feng Wujiang. Now that he's dead, his bloodline is gone. How could Yu Huajin just let it go? If it was someone else, they would consider the big picture and wouldn't make a big fuss just because of one person's death. But she's Yu Huajin. Who knows what she'll do?" Lin Yu suddenly felt a headache coming on. Previously, when Lu Yi defeated Tan Shu despite being the weaker party, she felt that she had gained a lot of face. But now she knew that she had poked a hole in the sky. Just as Zhang Kuan had said, other warriors of the Spirit Sea realm would consider the big picture even if they were angry. But Yu Huajin was a crazy woman. A crazy woman would always do something unexpected. Fairy Woods Adventure. Especially now that Yu Huajin still held great power in Heaven's Gate, it was hard to say what she would do. Looking at it now, the reason why Tanshu was arranged to be at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass was because the battle here was not intense. The crazy woman had the selfish desire to protect her family's descendants. In addition, the Shocking Waves Lake Pass belonged to Heaven's Gate, so it was more convenient for her to take care of it. Just as Lin Yu was pondering, the guard tokens on both her and Zhang Kuen's waists moved at the same time. Their hearts skipped a beat, and they both had a bad premonition. They hurriedly checked, and when they looked at each other their expressions changed. What he was worried about had happened. Moreover, it came so quickly that they deeply experienced Yu Huajin's madness. Prepare for battle. A low shout, driven by spiritual power, instantly spread throughout the entire Dark Moon Forest Pass. In an instant, the entire pass was boiling like salt in a pot of oil. Many Wanmo Ridge cultivators rushed to leave, and the sound of preparing for battle spread everywhere. In less than 30 breaths of time, all the Wanmo Ridge cultivators in the pass started to move, which showed how efficient they were. Lu Yi, who was cultivating, was also alarmed. Sensing the abnormality, he hurriedly pushed the door open, but his face was still pale. He had already replenished his spiritual sense, but what he had told Tong Shuyao before was that he had used a forbidden technique to defeat Tan Shu, who was much stronger than him. Since it was a forbidden art, it naturally consumed a lot of spiritual power. Ordinary people could not recover so quickly. At a glance, he saw Tong Shuyao standing not far away looking up. "Senior Sister Tong, what happened?" Lu Yi asked. "Haotian Alliance is here." Tong Shuyao hurriedly replied. She also felt very strange. The Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass had not been at war for a long time. Why would Haotian Alliance attack for no reason? She faintly felt that it might have something to do with what happened in front of her, but she could not be sure. Lu Yi frowned as he listened. Haotian Alliance came to attack, and Li Taibai was from Wanmo Ridge. If he encountered people from Haotian Alliance, should he fight or not? If he fought, it would go against his conscience. If he did not fight, it would be easy to expose his weakness. In an instant, his face became paler and he staggered. His aura was extremely weak. "Junior brother Taibai." Tong Shuyao hurriedly went forward to support him. Lu Yi waved his hand. "That forbidden art consumes too much spiritual power. I will be fine after I rest for a few days." Tong Shuyao did not suspect him. "Junior brother, go back to your room for now. You don't have to participate in today's battle." Lu Yi nodded decisively. "Senior Sister Tong, be careful. Go back. I will report to the past master. You will not be punished for the crime of fighting." Tong Shuyao said this and flew up into the sky. Seeing that she had left, Lu Yi hurriedly went back into his room and closed the door. No matter what, he could not participate in today's battle. After the order to prepare for battle was given, even though there had been no battle for a long time, the Dark Moon Forest Pass was still operating quickly. News kept coming back from the front line. But soon, all the sources of information were cut off. Apparently, the scouts who went to scout for information had exposed their whereabouts. Everything pointed to disaster. On the city wall, Lin Yu and Zhang Kuan, the two past masters, stood side by side. They exerted their strength and looked into the distance. They could faintly see the huge formation of Haotian Alliance. That old demonic woman is crazy. But her identity is sensitive. She will not go to battle in person. Even so, I am sure that the Spirit Sea Realm warriors who are invading this time are not here. The two at the Shocking Waves Lake Pass must have sent reinforcements. Junior Sister Yu, send a message to the passes on the left and right. Tell them to be ready for reinforcements. Yes. Lin Yu accepted the order. She immediately sent a message to the Spirit Sea Realm warriors on the left and right, telling them to be ready for reinforcements. It was not good to ask them to come now. It was not appropriate to ask for reinforcements before the battle started. Not to mention that it would weaken their own morale. What if the Haotian Alliance was going to attack them from the left and right? If that was the case, asking for reinforcements now would be falling into the enemy's trap. They would be tired out and in danger. Plus, Spirit Sea Realm warriors were very fast. If they sensed something was wrong and sent reinforcements, it would take them less than an hour to get here. With the defense of the Dark Moon Forest Pass, they could hold on for an hour. The army of the Haotian Alliance was getting closer and closer. Zhang Kuan and Lin Yu frowned. Judging from the current situation, the Startling Waves Lake Pass had sent out all its forces. Even the two leaders of the Spirit Sea Realm were here. The two of them, a man and a woman, were at the same level as Zhang Kuan and Lin Yu. Even though they had never fought with each other before, if they really did, they would be evenly matched. They didn't see any other Spirit Sea Realm warriors. But if they wanted to hide, they wouldn't be able to detect them. I just got the news. That Lu Yueme is Tan Shu's birth mother. Zhang Kuan looked at the two Spirit Sea Realm ladies and said softly. They must have gone crazy. Lin Yu frowned. Just because one person died they made such a big fuss. The two passes that had been peaceful for a long time started a war because of this. If this news spread out it would only be a joke. But on the Heaven's Gate side, half of it was Yu Huajin who was in charge. Lu Yueme was also the pass master of the Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Tan Shu's death obviously made the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law lose their minds. Now they only wanted to avenge Tan Shu. How could they care about anything else? Even if this matter was reported to the group of elders in Haotian City, the group of elders wouldn't blame them because of this. They were on opposing sides and couldn't tolerate each other. It was normal for two tigers to send out troops to attack the pass. The death of the descendant was just an excuse. Activate the formation. When Zhang Kuan shouted, the defense formation of the Dark Moon Forest Pass was activated. The transparent light curtain turned into a big bowl and covered the pass. On the city wall, many formations started to shine. Once the enemy got close enough they would attack them head-on. Since ancient times, between attack and defense, the defending side always had the advantage. So, although the Shocking Waves Lake Pass sent out all its forces, Zhang Kuan and Lin Yu weren't too worried. Based on the current situation, it was impossible for the other side to attack the Dark Moon Forest Pass. The only thing they needed to worry about was whether there were any hidden Divine Ocean Realm cultivators. The Grand Heaven Alliance's army clearly saw the Dark Moon Forest Pass's response. Hence, they stopped outside the attack range. Lu Yueme was dressed in a white palace dress. Her face was as cold as ice. She walked out of the crowd and stood 500 feet away from the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Her gaze swept across every section of the city wall as if she was looking for someone. But she didn't find anything. Finally, she retracted her gaze in disappointment and anger. It's really delightful to have a guest coming from afar. Why didn't you inform me before coming? You should have informed me earlier so that I could go out and welcome you. Zhang Kuan smiled and looked at Lu Yueme. Lu Yueme said softly, "Where's Li Tai Bai? Hand over Li Tai Bai and I'll retreat immediately." Zhang Kuan raised his eyebrows. Although he knew that the origin of today's battle was the battle for the top 8, it was one thing to know and another to hear the other side admit it. He understood that Tan Shu's death really made Lu Yueme and Yu Huajin angry. They didn't even try to hide it. It wasn't strange when he thought about it. More than 30 years ago, their son and husband was killed by Feng Wujiang in front of the army. They raised their grandson and son with great difficulty and arranged for him to be in this mountain pass where there weren't many battles. They were afraid that he would bump into something, but who knew that he would still die? Moreover, he was killed by someone whose cultivation was lower than his by a fourth-order cultivator. No one could accept this. You must be joking, fellow Lu. Let's not talk about the fact that I don't know who Li Tai Bai is. I also don't know if he's a soldier of my Dark Moon Forest Pass. Even if I knew, I wouldn't hand him over to you. Hand him over. Otherwise, I'll make your Dark Moon Forest Pass restless. Lu Yueme's expression suddenly turned ferocious. Fellow Lu, don't forget you're a divine sea cultivator. In front of two armies, don't lose your composure. Lu Yueme didn't care about her composure. Turning her gaze towards the city, she pushed her spirit chi and shouted, "Li Tai Bai, get out here. Today I'll tear your corpse into 10,000 pieces." She clicked and downloaded the best book-chasing app. Many readers used it to read books. Chapter 942. In the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yi had just closed the door and made up his mind not to get involved in today's muddy waters when he heard a woman's angry voice. "Li Tai Bai, get out here. Today I will tear you to pieces." He was stunned as he couldn't understand why someone would want to kill him. Judging from the other party's aura, she was in the Spirit Sea realm. He had only been in the Dark Moon Forest Pass for 2 days. If he had offended anyone, it would be Tan Shu, whom he killed a few days ago. Is she here for revenge? If that's the case, then what happened today must be related to what happened a few days ago. He frowned secretly. Although he didn't know who the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was, she was undoubtedly from Grand Heaven Alliance and was most likely one of Tan Shu's elders. It wasn't wise to send out troops just because of Tan Shu's death. Outside the mountain pass, Lu Yueme's gaze swept over the area, but she still couldn't find any trace of Li Tai Bai. She became even angrier as she turned her gaze towards Lin Yu and Zhang Kuan. She gritted her teeth and said, "You asked for it." She turned around and returned to her camp. "Prepare for battle." Zhang Kuan gave the order with a solemn expression. Looking at the current situation, today's battle was unavoidable. Lu Yueme had lost her mind. Unless Myriad Demon Ridge handed over Li Tai Bai, Grand Heaven Alliance wouldn't retreat. However, the two camps were on opposite sides and had a blood feud. Not to mention Li Tai Bai's contribution to Myriad Demon Ridge a few days ago, he was a 3rd Order True Lake Realm cultivator who killed a 7th Order True Lake Realm cultivator. Even if he was an ordinary cultivator, Myriad Demon Ridge wouldn't hand him over. They could only fight. Search. Inside and outside the pass, the atmosphere instantly turned solemn and tense. Thousands of cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance had already formed a formation to tackle the enemy. Like a black cloud, they slowly advanced towards the Dark Moon Forest Pass. When they were a certain distance away, the Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators suddenly sped up. At the same time, an angry roar came from the city walls of the Dark Moon Forest Pass. "Kill!" In an instant, many formations on the city walls buzzed as their powers were activated. Powerful attacks turned into bright lights as they shot towards the incoming enemies. A few months ago, the Lonely Mountain Pass in the Myriad Devil Ridge had also been breached. However, at that time, the breaching force was the Fire Spirit Race's army that had been sealed for a long time and had lost their minds. Faced with Lonely Mountain City's various countermeasures, the irrational Fire Spirit Race suffered heavy casualties in an instant. However, Grand Heaven Alliance wasn't the Fire Spirit tribe after all. Since they were here to tackle the problem, they were naturally fully prepared. When the attacks from the Dark Moon Forest Pass arrived, the defensive formation on the row of armored battleships in front of the Grand Heaven Alliance army was instantly activated. It turned into a huge shield and blocked all the attacks. Many cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance hid behind the armored battleships and moved forward quickly. One side attacked fiercely, while the other side pushed through the baptism of numerous attacks. A great battle had begun. At this moment, Lu Yi had already leapt onto the roof and was looking down from above. Seeing this scene from afar, even though he wasn't directly involved, he couldn't help but feel his fighting spirit surge, wishing he could charge into battle right now. Since he started cultivating until now, although he had fought many people and even had the terrifying achievement of killing 2,000 enemies from the Myriad Devil Ridge alone, this scale of battle was completely different from what he had experienced before. In such a big environment, the cultivators from both sides were like two torrents that gathered. Every cultivator was a part of the torrent, and no one could stay out of it. Even the most cowardly soldiers would be easily stimulated to fight. However, he really couldn't get involved in today's matter. Li Tai Bai was a sword cultivator from the Myriad Devil Ridge. However, Lu Ye was a soldier cultivator from the Grand Heaven Alliance. He killed Tan Shu to stand up for his third senior brother, so he wouldn't feel any psychological burden. However, he definitely couldn't become the enemy of the Grand Heaven Alliance in such a situation. Therefore, he could only wait and see. Between the attack and defense, the Grand Heaven Alliance army was getting closer and closer to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. However, since ancient times, the defending side always had the upper hand in such a battle. Following Zhang Kuan and Lin Yu's deployment, the Grand Heaven Alliance's iron-armored warships gradually suffered damage. Without the protection of the iron-armored warships, the Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators hiding behind the warships suffered some casualties. Therefore, it was never easy to break through a defense. Unless one had an absolute advantage in terms of military strength, no one would be willing to start a war easily. However, the startling Waves Lake Pass had mobilized their troops today, which made Zhang Kuan and Lin Yu even more vigilant. Lu Yueme had indeed lost her mind, but she was a divine sea realm cultivator after all. It was impossible that she didn't know the drawbacks of breaking through a defense. Since she knew the drawbacks, she must have some confidence in breaking through a defense. What was she relying on? Zhang Kuan and Lin Yu didn't know. All they could do was to stay alert. As the thousands of cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance gradually advanced, the number of casualties increased. There were less than half of the iron-armored warships at the front. Most of the cultivators from the Grand Heaven Alliance didn't have any defense to rely on, so they could only move around and dodge the incoming attacks. Something isn't right. On the city wall, Zhang Kuan suddenly shouted. Lin Yu also noticed that something was wrong. According to the progress of the Grand Heaven Alliance's army, they should have started their counterattack by now because they were close enough. Only by counterattacking could they wear down the power of the Dark Moon Forest Pass's defense formation. Only by breaking through the Dark Moon Forest Pass's defense formation could they break through a defense formation. However, in fact, even when they were close enough to counterattack, the Grand Heaven Alliance still didn't do much. They seemed to only want to push closer to the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Be careful of ghost cultivators. Lin Yu shouted. Her spiritual consciousness surged and she started to check the surroundings. She originally thought that the Grand Heaven Alliance had sent some ghost cultivators to break through the defense formation secretly. However, she didn't find anything after checking. The attacks from the Myriad Demon's Ridge were getting fiercer. The casualties of the Grand Heaven Alliance's cultivators were increasing. Even so, the cultivators from the Startling Waves Lake Pass were still advancing in an orderly manner. 30 minutes later, the Grand Heaven Alliance's army was only 1,000 feet away from the Dark Moon Forest Pass. However, they paid a huge price for that. Since the beginning of the battle, the Grand Heaven Alliance didn't attack even once. They were only defending and dodging from the beginning to the end. However, Jianghu wasn't happy at all. The more the situation was like that, the more determined the Grand Heaven Alliance was. The uneasiness in his heart was extremely strong. However, he really didn't know what the opponent was trying to do. Hence, even though he was prepared, he didn't know where to start. They're trying to break the defense formation by force. Lin Yu shouted. After advancing to such a close distance, the Grand Heaven Alliance's intention was obvious. They wanted to break the defense formation of the Dark Moon Forest Pass in one go. However, could they do it? If they couldn't, the Grand Heaven Alliance would be in trouble this time. As they were so close to each other, the space for the Grand Heaven Alliance's cultivators to move became smaller. Once they couldn't break the defense formation or escape, it was highly possible that they would be annihilated. By then, even if Lu Yueme and the other Divine Ocean Realm cultivator didn't die, they would definitely be punished by the Grand Heaven Alliance's military law. That was a fate worse than dying in battle. Kill? Lu Yueme's voice suddenly rang out. As she gave the order, the situation seemed to have changed mysteriously. As they advanced to the front of the Dark Moon Forest Pass, many of the Grand Heaven Alliance's cultivators saw their companions getting injured and dying in battle. They had nowhere to vent their anger. As Lu Yueme gave the order, all of the Grand Heaven Alliance's cultivators vented their anger. All of them took out something from their storage pouches and attacked the Dark Moon Forest Pass. In an instant, the ferocious attacks were like a storm. However, the strange thing was that the attacks didn't have strong spiritual power waves and didn't give off a dangerous feeling. What's that? Lin Yu used her eyesight to take a look. She saw that the Grand Heaven Alliance's cultivators were attacking things that looked like spirit stones. She was confused. Fire spirit stones? She was confused. Why did the Grand Heaven Alliance attack so many fire spirit stones? It was true that the energy within the fire spirit rock was not stable enough. If it was knocked into, it could explode and cause a certain amount of damage. However, a simple explosion of the fire spirit rock would not pose much of a threat to the defenses of the Dark Moon Forest Pass. The Grand Heaven Alliance's trump card? Was this thing? Just as she was confused, Jianghu suddenly exclaimed, "Not good, it's the exploding fire spirit stones." Lin Yu's heart skipped a beat. She felt like she had heard of the exploding fire spirit stones before. However, she didn't have time to think about it. The exploding fire spirit stones that covered the sky had already crashed onto the light screen of the Dark Moon Forest Pass's formation. Boom, 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 boom. As the first sound rang out, it was followed by a continuous buzzing sound. Huge flames surged out like a volcanic eruption. The explosion of each exploding fire spirit stone was equivalent to the full power attack of a true lake stage cultivator. In an instant, at least 20,000 exploding fire spirit stones buzzed together. The power produced was terrifying. Lu Yi, who was watching this scene from the roof, felt his eyelids twitch violently. He didn't expect to see such a scene. Exploding fire spirit stones, he was too familiar with this thing. He was the one who had refined this thing. However, this thing was made by Gan Wudong. It belonged to the Law Division. Why would it appear here? Although he didn't know why the exploding fire spirit stones would appear here, he knew that he was in big trouble. This was the first time something that he made appeared in a battle between two factions. Furthermore, it was used against him. How ridiculous was this? Furthermore, looking at the number of exploding fire spirit stones, it seemed like all the exploding fire spirit stones that he made previously were used up. All for the sake of achieving success in one fell swoop. The explosion of 20,000 exploding fire spirit stones was equivalent to the full power attack of 20,000 true lake stage cultivators. Moreover, it was done in an extremely short amount of time. The defensive formation of the Dark Moon Forest Pass wasn't bad. It could even block the attack of a Divine Sea Stage cultivator. However, at this moment, its luster dimmed and it started to waver. On the light screen of the formation, countless ripples spread out in all directions. The scene was spectacular. Chapter 943. The power of 20,000 explosive fire spirit stones was released at the same time. Even so, the defensive formation of the Dark Moon Forest Pass was still intact. Just as Lin Yu and Zhang Kuan secretly let out a sigh of relief, a terrifying energy fluctuation suddenly appeared. Lu Yueme was surrounded by spiritual energy. Her clothes and black hair were fluttering in the wind. She took out a treasure that looked like a short spear. She poured her spiritual energy into the spear. Instantly, the short spear was covered in thunder and turned into a bolt of lightning. Lu Yueme grabbed the short spear as if she was really grabbing a bolt of lightning. Destructive lightning spear. Zhang Kuan's eyelids twitched. He recognized the short spear at a glance. It wasn't that he paid much attention to Lu Yueme. It was just that the destructive lightning spear was too famous because it was the most precious treasure of the Heavenly Yuan sect. It was barely on the same level as the mountain river diagram that shook the 9 states. Generally speaking, this kind of most precious treasure was kept in the sect. It wouldn't be used unless it was a major event that would affect the future of the sect. Therefore, no one expected Lu Yueme to bring this treasure out this time. She obviously didn't have the qualifications to do so by herself. However, she had Yu Huajin behind her, so there was room for manipulation. If it was under normal circumstances, the defensive formation of the Dark Moon Forest Pass might be able to block the spear. However, the formation had just been severely damaged and was about to fall. Once Lu Yueme activated the power of the destructive lightning spear, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Don't even think about it," Zhang Kuan shouted. He rushed toward Lu Yueme in an attempt to stop her. However, as soon as he moved, another Divine Sea Realm cultivator from the Haotian Alliance met him and stopped him halfway. Although Zhang Kuan was impatient, he could only accept the fight. Seeing this, Lin Yu could only rush out of the pass and rush toward Lu Yueme. However, Lu Yueme didn't even look at her. She just poured her spiritual power into the spear in her hand. Her eyes were deep as she looked toward the Dark Moon Forest. Somewhere in the pass, she gritted her teeth and shouted, "Thief, you will die today." She had already found Lu Ye's trace. It was true that she had never seen Li Taibai before. However, when Lu Yi killed Tan Shu, many cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance witnessed it. It was not difficult for her to know what Li Taibai looked like. Therefore, she immediately saw Lu Yi standing on a rooftop and looking in their direction. She was dressed in white and had a gourd at her waist. Such a symbol was too obvious. "You have to get past me first," Lin Yu shouted. As soon as she finished speaking, a figure dashed out from the side. Before he made his move, no one noticed him, but once he made his move, his identity as a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was revealed. Lin Yu was instantly stopped. Oh no! Lin Yu had a bad feeling. She and Zhang Kuan had been guarding against the Haotian Alliance for a long time to see if there were other warriors of the Spirit Sea Realm hiding in the dark. Now, it seemed that there were indeed some of them. However, they hid very well and didn't reveal any flaws. Therefore, neither Lin Yu nor Zhang Kuan noticed. Now that there was no one from the Myriad Devil Ridge to restrain Lu Yueme, and she had a divine item like the Annihilation Lightning Spear in her hands, the Dark Moon Forest Pass was in danger. Fortunately, when she saw that the situation was not good, she had already sent a message to the left and right mountain passes. 2 Spirit Sea Realm cultivators were coming from the left and right mountain passes. They would arrive within an hour. As long as they could hold on for an hour, the crisis would be resolved. At the same time, the lightning spear in Lu Yueme's hand turned into a bolt of lightning and struck towards the Dark Moon Forest Pass. There wasn't much noise and it was almost silent. However, when the lightning fell on the protective formation, the formation that was already on the verge of collapse became even more difficult. It was holding on. Crack. Only then did the deafening sound of a thunderclap explode. The moment the lightning spear landed on the protective formation, the lightning spread everywhere, making the entire protective formation look like a semicircular lightning net. The protective formation that was on the verge of collapse could no longer hold on. With a cracking sound, it shattered like a broken mirror. In an instant, the cultivators of the Haotian Alliance who had been holding back for a long time rushed into the Dark Moon Forest Pass under the lead of Lu Yueme. The cultivators from both sides clashed head-on, and a great battle broke out. Lu Yueme, on the other hand, killed her way out of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators' camp. She was a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator who had no one to restrain her. In such a situation, the power she could unleash was extremely terrifying. If she wanted to, she could start a massacre. However, she did not do so. Instead, she landed on the roof where Lu Yi was standing just now. Looking left and right, there was no trace of Lu Yi. When she activated the lightning spear of destruction and the entire Dark Moon Forest Pass's protective formation was enveloped by the lightning net, Lu Yi had already escaped. Naturally, he would not stand here and wait for his death. Lu Yueme came here specifically to find him. Breaking through the barrier was just a process. Hence, he knew that he could not fall into Lu Yueme's hands no matter what. He was currently hiding in a secluded place. He activated the breath concealment and concealment spirit marks and concealed his aura completely. He did not move at all, the rest was up to the will of the heavens. However, how difficult would it be to escape from under the nose of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator? Lu Yueme showed a look of surprise. She knew that her attack just now was not something a third-order True Lake Realm cultivator could take. It should have immobilized him, but the result was not satisfactory. Artifact robe? Lu Yueme's eyes were sharp. She could tell at a glance that the Scarlet Dragon battle robe worn by Lu Yi was extraordinary. She knew that her opponent must have relied on the power of his artifact robe to take her blow. However, so what if he could take her blow? Being targeted by her, how could a True Lake Realm cultivator do anything? In front of her, Lu Yi was fleeing. If he was not afraid of exposing his identity by activating his flight spirit mark, he would have already used it. Now he could only use the wind travel spirit mark. However, with his third-order True Lake Realm cultivation, he was still able to move like lightning. But then again, the difference in cultivation was too great. Even if he activated his flight spirit mark, it would be useless. A huge doubt welled up in his heart, because he faintly felt that Lu Yueme had no intention of killing him. Otherwise, the blow just now would not have been so weak. With the protection of the Scarlet Dragon battle robe and his strong physique, although he was caught off guard, he only suffered a minor injury. He did not think that the other party would let him go out of kindness. The moment their eyes met, he could see the hatred and murderous intent in the other party's eyes. Lu Yueme could not find Lu Ye's whereabouts for a while and could not help but become angry. She also knew that Lu Yi could not have escaped in such a short time and must be hiding somewhere nearby. She immediately pushed her divine sense to investigate the surroundings, trying to find Lu Ye's whereabouts. However, she found nothing. "Let's see where you can hide," Lu Yueme shouted angrily. The spirit energy around her body fluctuated, and a powerful spirit technique swept out in all directions. Many houses collapsed in an instant, turning into ruins. With Lu Yueme as the center, the power of the spirit technique quickly spread out in all directions. Many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators who could not dodge in time were caught in it and died in an instant. Lu Yi did not dare to look, but he personally felt the anger of this Spirit Sea Realm cultivator and was secretly shocked. The spirit technique's power was getting closer and closer to his hiding place, and he could not hide any longer. A moment later, the helpless Lu Yi could only soar into the sky and quickly rush out of the mountain pass. "Where do you think you're going?" Lu Yueme turned her head and stared at Lu Ye's figure. She raised her hand and shot a spirit technique from afar. Feeling the danger behind him, Lu Yi wanted to dodge, but the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator's attack was too fierce. Even if he wanted to, he was powerless. The spirit technique landed solidly on his back. Lu Yi staggered and spat out a mouthful of blood, as if he had suffered a heavy blow. Even his spirit energy was somewhat scattered. Now that she had the opportunity to kill him, she wanted to capture him alive. The difference in strength between them was too great. Lu Yueme indeed had the ability to capture him alive. She probably wanted to bring him back to pay respects to the dead Tan Shu. In an instant, Lu Yi saw through Lu Yueme's plan. This was good news for him. If a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator really wanted to kill him, his chances of survival would be very low. If she wanted to capture him alive, at least his current situation would not be too dangerous. Just as he was thinking, Lu Yueme's second attack arrived. Lu Yi sensed it, but he was still unable to dodge. Once again he was hit in the back. Spitting out another mouthful of blood, Lu Yi saw stars in front of his eyes. His body fell uncontrollably. Although the pain in his chest was unbearable, it confirmed his speculation. Lu Yueme had no intention of killing him. She really did want to capture him alive. The point guard is here. Before he even landed, the third attack had arrived. This time Lu Yi didn't think about dodging. He hurriedly activated the Scarlet Dragon Battle Robe's protection. In an instant, a layer of light covered his body, like a protective formation. This was the magic of the robe. It had a protective formation inside that could be activated by spiritual energy. If used properly, it could often produce miraculous effects. Relying on the Scarlet Dragon Battle Robe's protection, Lu Yi was able to block the third attack. He fell into a building, smashing the roof into pieces. The moment he landed, he quickly stood up, took a deep breath, and forcibly calmed the chaotic spiritual energy in his body. Then he madly poured it into the sword gourd at his waist. Looking up, Lu Yueme's figure quickly floated down from the broken roof. Obviously she wanted to capture him in one go. Four eyes met and Lu Yueme gritted her teeth. "You deserve to die." As she spoke, she stretched out her hand to grab Lu Yi. A giant hand condensed from pure spiritual energy slammed down, and the broken house collapsed in an instant. Lu Yi patted the sword gourd at his waist and shouted, "Go!" Boundless sword light surged out from the sword gourd. The sword light transformed into a sword dragon that shook its head and wagged its tail to meet the giant hand made of spiritual energy. Such means were obviously beyond the scope of what a third-order true Lake Realm cultivator could perform. Seeing this, Lu Yueme couldn't help but be startled. She was furious, and the speed at which the giant hand made of spiritual energy slammed down became even more ferocious. The sword dragon collided with the giant hand, and in an instant the sword light was annihilated. The quality of the sword gourd was indeed beyond the scope of Lu Ye's understanding. However, at this moment he couldn't activate the sword gourd's power at all. All he could rely on was the sword chi that the sword gourd absorbed from spirit artifacts. He could instantly kill Tan Shu, a 7th-order true Lake Realm cultivator, but facing a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator like Lu Yueme, such means were still weak. Fortunately, he was able to delay the speed of the giant hand made of spiritual energy. Lu Yi clicked to download the best book-chasing app. Many readers used it to read books. Chapter 944. Lu Yueme never expected that a mere third-order true Lake Realm cultivator would have such a strong foundation. It was beyond her imagination. One had to know that all three of her previous attacks were aimed at severely injuring Lu Yi, and each of them was even fiercer than the last. However, Li Tai Bai didn't lose his ability to move even after the 3 attacks. He even had the strength to resist her. Tan Shu had been killed by such a method. She once heard that Li Tai Bai, who killed Tan Shu, was a sword cultivator who could ride a sword. He killed his enemies with his aura. This person was very scheming. He fought 6 battles with Grand Heaven Alliance. He didn't use his full strength in the first 5 battles and didn't even injure or kill his opponents. Only in the last battle did he suddenly kill his opponent. Tan Shu's death was caused by his carelessness and underestimation of his opponent. However, it was also caused by Li Tai Bai's careful planning. Lu Yueme hated Li Tai Bai to the core. The purpose of this trip was to bring him back and bring him to Qin Shu's grave to offer his life as a sacrifice to comfort him. She thought it would be a piece of cake but didn't expect so many troubles to arise. Now that her means were resisted by a true Lake Realm cultivator, she was even more annoyed. Just as she was about to take down Lu Yi in one fell swoop, a loud shout came from afar. "Fellow Taoist Lu, finish this quickly." It was another Spirit Sea Realm cultivator from Shocking Waves Lake Pass. Although they relied on the power of 20,000 explosive fire spirit rocks and the Annihilation Thunder Spear to break the Startling Waves Lake Pass's defensive formation, they suffered a lot of casualties previously. In the current head-on confrontation, the Grand Heaven Alliance's cultivators did not have much of an advantage. Moreover, this was the territory of 10,000 Demons Ridge. 10,000 Demons Ridge must have asked for reinforcements. For Grand Heaven Alliance, a prolonged battle was disadvantageous. He had an agreement with Lu Yueme. He and another invited warrior of the Spirit Sea Realm would block Lin Yu and Zhang Kuan. Lu Yueme would enter the mountain pass and kill Li Tai Bai and the other soldiers of the Demon's Ridge. They would aim to cripple the defenders of the Dark Moon Forest Pass in this battle. World Daluo, by then they could retreat safely. But now, it seemed that Lu Yueme didn't fulfill her promise. This woman wanted to capture Li Tai Bai alive. Otherwise, how could she not succeed? The current situation wasn't favorable for Grand Heaven Alliance. If Lu Yueme continued to be delayed, Grand Heaven Alliance would have to pay a huge price to escape. In desperation, he could only shout from afar. Although Lu Yueme was blinded by hatred, she was still a warrior at the Spirit Sea Realm after all. How could she not know the changes in the battle? Initially, Zhang Xian had intended to capture Li Taibai alive, but upon seeing the other party's means, he knew that he couldn't drag this out any longer. "I can't let you live," Lu Yuemei shouted angrily, her killing intent surging. If a trivial third-order true Lake Realm cultivator had such strength, what would happen if he was allowed to grow up? In recent years, Lu Ye from the Jade Blood sect had appeared in the Grand Heaven Alliance. He was a shocking talent and had caused great trouble for the sects in the Myriad Devil Ridge in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. Even the top sects could not do anything to him. Because of some special reasons, Lu Yuemei also paid more attention to Lu Yi. But from what he saw, this Li Taibai was no weaker than Lu Yi. In fact, he felt that Li Taibai was even stronger. It could be said that Li Taibai was Lu Yi of the Myriad Devil Ridge. The Myriad Devil Ridge did not have a good way to deal with the real Lu Yi, but at this moment she had Li Taibai's life in her hands. Furthermore, she had a personal grudge against him. This was a God-given opportunity, so she had to eliminate him completely. As she shouted angrily, she pushed her spirit chi. At the same time, a mysterious power surged out and rushed towards Lu Yi. Obviously, she had used her divine sense attack. Her cultivation was much stronger than Ninghu, who Lu Yi had met in the Immortal Dawn Mountain. She was at the 7th Order Divine Sea Realm. Ninghu had just entered the Divine Sea Realm, and Immortal Dawn Mountain was a 4th grade sect. His foundation was not strong, so his use of divine sense attacks was very weak. He could only use his divine sense to attack. But Lu Yuemei was different. She was from a 1st grade Heavenly Yuan sect, and her cultivation was 5 orders higher than Ninghu's. Her use of divine sense was undoubtedly much more subtle. As soon as he used his divine sense, Lu Yi felt a sense of impending doom. All of a sudden, he vaguely felt a sharp attack coming from the void, which instantly entered his mind. He immediately knew what he had encountered. After all, he had experienced it before. It could be said that he was familiar with it the first time, the second time, and the third time. For a moment he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was difficult for other true Lake Realm cultivators to encounter a Divine Sea Realm cultivator targeting them, but he had encountered it 3 times since leaving the Cloud River battlefield. The first time it was fine as he wasn't targeted, but the aftermath of the divine sense attack by Wanzhong on Thought Moon Immortal had swept over him. Even so, he had fallen unconscious. But later he had profited from the disaster and formed his own divine lake. The second time was from Ninghu of the Immortal Dawn Mountain. This was the third time. Lu Yi was incomparably glad that he had the foresight to pay such a huge price to protect his own divine lake. He had also obtained the teachings of the gold and silver flood dragons, obtaining the twin dragons' method of protecting the sea. Otherwise he would have already met with disaster in the Immortal Dawn Mountain. The golden lock hanging on his chest flashed. At the same time, the roar of a dragon resounded in his mind. 2 layers of protection had been activated. The protection of the golden lock was better than nothing. This time the twin dragons protecting the seas failed to protect Lu Yi completely. The attack that came from the void actually broke through the twin dragons protecting the seas and directly cut into his deity's pool. It wasn't that the twin dragon sea guard was weak. After all, it was just a protective measure left by the 2 flood dragons beside Lu Ye's divine lake. Lu Yuemei's killing intent had been aroused and she had used her full strength. The twin dragon sea guard was naturally unable to completely defend against the attack. Lu Yuemei's divine sense attack was weakened by more than half and slashed into the divine lake. It didn't cause any waves. The soul-suppressing pagoda that was exchanged from the War Merit Pavilion was indeed an excellent soul artifact. With this pagoda guarding the divine lake, it didn't suffer any destructive attacks at all. If it were any other true Lake Realm cultivator, even a 9th Order cultivator, they would have died on the spot. Lu Yi only felt a slight pain in the depths of his mind before he was fine. However, he let out an exaggerated scream. Even the spiritual energy in his body became extremely scattered at this moment. It was as if he had been killed. As his spiritual energy scattered, the defensive barrier formed by the many sword chis suddenly loosened. It could no longer resist. Die! Lu Yuemei shouted. The giant hand of spiritual energy pressed down and drowned Lu Ye's figure. Dust flew everywhere. Lu Yuemei swept away the dust with a wave of her sleeve. Looking down, she saw Lu Yi lying flat on the ground with a pool of red blood below him. His whole body was like a broken porcelain. His exposed skin was full of cracks and blood was flowing out. He was motionless and his aura was weak. The spiritual energy fluctuations emitted from his body were only at the level of a spirit stream realm cultivator. Glaring at Lu Yi hatefully, Lu Yuemei gritted her teeth. You got off too easy. She had originally planned to capture him alive and bring him back. In the end she was forced to kill him. The depression in her heart was hard to vent. She didn't care about Lu Ye's life or death. She was confident that after her various methods, even if Lu Ye didn't die immediately, he wouldn't live for more than an incense stick's worth of time. Leaving him alive and letting him taste the despair of death was more to her liking. She turned around and charged towards the myriad Demon Ridge crowd. She was a 7th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator who had no one to restrain her, so no one could stop her. For a time myriad Demon Ridge suffered heavy casualties, causing Linyu and Jianghu's eyes to bulge, but there was nothing they could do. After ruthlessly slaughtering and venting her anger, Lu Yueme shouted, "Retreat!" The Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators who were trembling with the myriad Demon Ridge all over Dark Moon Forest Pass received the order. They fought and retreated in an orderly manner. Even if the myriad Demon Ridge wanted to pursue, they were afraid of Lu Yueme's might and didn't dare to act rashly. After a short while the Grand Heaven Alliance came and left in a grandiose manner. Even the corpses of the cultivators who died in the battle were all taken away. Although Linyu and Zhang Kuan were furious, they could only watch as the Shocking Waves Lake Pass army retreated. Both of them felt suffocated and panicked. Thunder roared and lightning flashed in the sky. Suddenly a storm came down. Dark Moon Forest Pass was a mess. In the ruins, bean-sized raindrops dripped down. Lu Yi, who was lying on the ground, slowly opened his eyes. He stretched out his hand with difficulty and put the golden body token hidden in his sleeve into his storage space. If Lu Yueme had insisted on killing him just now, he would have had to use the golden body token to protect himself. Otherwise he would have died without a doubt. Fortunately, Lu Yueme felt that he didn't have long to live, so she didn't pay much attention to him. Of course the main reason was that time was tight. She also knew that she couldn't delay for too long. Otherwise, once the Divine Sea Realm cultivators from Myriad Demon Ridge arrived, not only would she be in danger, but many of the Grand Heaven Alliance soldiers would also suffer heavy casualties. Lu Yueme didn't want to capture him alive to kill him, but at least she could avenge the death of Tan Shu. Lu Ye's eyes were calm. He didn't know Lu Yueme's name, but from the other Divine Sea Realm cultivators' words, the other party's surname was Lu. Thinking back to the battle just now, it could be said to be extremely thrilling. It was also at the crucial moment that he had a flash of inspiration, which allowed him to escape from the disaster. The moment the other party used their spiritual sense to attack, Lu Yi only had two choices. He could go with the flow or counterattack. If he went with the flow, it would end up like this. If he counterattacked, it would only lead to an even fiercer attack. At that time the golden body token would definitely be lost. Therefore Lu Yi made a prompt decision and pretended to be disturbed by the spiritual sense attack. Even his spiritual energy became chaotic. He even imitated what a normal true Lake Realm cultivator would look like when they were attacked by such means. After all, he had experienced it before, so he was very familiar with how to disguise himself. As for the Spirit Stream Realm spiritual energy waves emitted from his body, it was naturally the effect of imitating power. Lu Yueme saw that his spiritual energy waves were weak and he looked miserable. In addition, he took her spiritual sense attack head-on. Naturally, she would think that he didn't have long to live. However, she didn't know that all of this was just a disguise. She didn't have too much resentment. After all, he was from the Grand Heaven Alliance. He killed Tan Shu, so it was natural for the other party to want to avenge Tan Shu. If he was really from the Myriad Devil Ridge, then it was natural for him to hate Lu Yueme. However, just to avenge a personal grudge, he mobilized so many troops and even caused many soldiers of the Grand Heaven Alliance to die in battle. That was something he shouldn't have done. For the Shocking Waves Lake Pass to have such a Divine Sea Realm cultivator as its master, it was indeed the sorrow of many soldiers there. Click to download the best book chasing app. Many readers use this to read books aloud. Chapter 945. After the Haotian Alliance retreated, the Divine Sea Realm reinforcements from the 10,000 Demons Ridge finally arrived. It wasn't that they weren't fast enough. It was just that the Haotian Alliance was too fast and caught the Dark Moon Forest Pass off guard. Originally, Lin Yu and Zhang Kuan thought that they could hold on for an hour with the protection of the pass. However, they were caught off guard by the Haotian Alliance's exploding Fire Spirit Rock and shattering Thunder Spear. The protection formation was broken, which led to the subsequent events. In this battle, the Haotian Alliance suffered a lot of casualties and so did the 10,000 Demons Ridge. It was mainly because Lu Yueme killed a lot of people. An unrestrained Divine Sea Realm cultivator was too scary. Heavy rain poured down. The entire pass was bathed in a sorrowful atmosphere. The surviving soldiers started to clean up the battlefield and take care of the injured. Li Tai-bai is here, someone exclaimed. Then a few figures rushed over from all directions and saw Lu Ye's miserable injuries. They were all secretly shocked. Quick, take him down. Lu Yi, who was pretending to be unconscious, felt that someone used spiritual power to wrap around his body. Soon he was transferred to a safe place. He heard suppressed groans and cries. This was obviously a place for the injured cultivators. He sensed that there were many medical cultivators running around to treat the injured cultivators. Soon someone came to his side. When he saw his condition, he couldn't help but exclaim, "His injuries are so serious. Elder you don't know." Li Tai-bai was targeted by a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. These injuries were caused by Lu Yueme. "Elder you, please save him," someone explained. Lu Yi killed Tan Shu a few days ago, which greatly boosted the morale of the soldiers in the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Many people also realized his great potential. Naturally, many people wanted to befriend him. Today, Lu Yueme killed her way into the Dark Moon Forest Pass and targeted Lu Yi directly. Many people saw that too. So, they knew how Lu Yi got his injuries. "He's Li Tai-bai, who's been in the limelight recently," Elder Yu said. Obviously, he had heard of Li Tai-bai's name recently. Heroes come from the young indeed. It's really amazing to be able to survive a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. I'll try my best. Thank you, Elder Yu. I still have military matters to attend to. I'll take my leave. Go. A moment later, Lu Yi felt a gentle power enveloping his body. It should be Old Yu's healing method. Quietly probing, this medical cultivator called Old Yu wasn't young and his cultivation wasn't bad, but he was only at the 9th Order True Lake Realm and not at the Divine Sea Realm. Lu Yi immediately felt relieved. His injuries were indeed very serious. His divine soul was fine, but the key was his physical body. Lu Yueme was angry and wanted to kill him with her palm. Fortunately, he had a strong physique and the protection of the Scarlet Dragon battle armor. Otherwise, he would have been smashed to smithereens. Even so, Lu Ye's physical condition was not optimistic at this moment. If not for the fear of exposing himself, Lu Yi would have already fainted. He forcefully maintained his consciousness because he was afraid that once he fainted, the thousand-faced spirit tattoos would lose their effect. At that time, his true appearance would be revealed. When the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge saw that Li Tai-bai had turned into Lu Yi, they would become a laughingstock. At this moment, under Old Yu's treatment, Lu Yi only felt the pain all over his body weaken a little. Time passed. Old Yu was indeed doing his best to treat him, but Lu Ye's injuries were too serious. Even with his strong physical foundation, it would not be easy for him to completely recover. During this period, some people came to visit Lu Yi, but what puzzled Lu Yi was that Tong Shuyao did not appear. This made him faintly realize that Tong Shuyao had either died in the previous battle or was seriously injured like him. Otherwise, based on her previous attitude towards him, it was impossible for her not to come and visit him. He didn't think too much about it. The path of cultivation was full of thorns. Life and death were normal. Time passed. Until a certain moment, Lu Yi suddenly heard a familiar voice. "How is he?" It was Lin Yu who came to check on him. Old Yu, who had been taking care of him carefully, immediately replied, "The bottom of his body is not bad. He barely saved his life, but what? Logically speaking, with his physical foundation he should have woken up by now, but he is still unconscious. This old master suspects that his soul is injured, causing him to be unconscious. After all, he escaped from a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Lu Yueme is very likely to have used her divine sense to attack him." Lu Yueme did use her divine sense to attack. Lin Yu took the lead. Although she was blocked by a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance, she was still paying attention to Lu Ye's situation. How could she not notice such obvious signs of Lu Yueme using her divine sense to attack? That's right. Lu Yueme is a 7th Order Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Not to mention that this kid is only a 3rd Order True Lake Realm cultivator. Even if this old master was a 9th Order Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, if Lu Yueme targeted him, his soul would be shattered and he would never wake up. You mean, he'll be in a coma forever? Even if he really woke up, the damage to his soul would be irreparable. When the time came, he would be muddle-headed and his actions would be sluggish. The great era of rebirth. Is there any way to cure him? Lin Yu frowned. Old Yu shook his head. This old master is powerless. Also, Senior should know what kind of soul injury is. This kind of injury is basically untreatable except for a few rare treasures. Lin Yu was silent for a moment before sighing, "What a pity." It was a pity that such an outstanding talent was lost. She originally thought that he was a rising star and was certain that he could compete with Haotian Alliance's Lu Ye. However, she did not expect that he would suffer such a disaster. His spirit was injured. Not to mention that he might never wake up. Even if he woke up, he would not have a bright future. She originally wanted to take this Li Tai Bai into her sect and cultivate him. She looked up at him. Old Yu smiled slightly. "This old master is a medical cultivator from Dark Moon Forest Pass. You were seriously injured before, and this old master has been treating you these days." Lu Yi showed a look of understanding. Just as he was about to speak, his expression suddenly turned ferocious, as if he was suffering great pain. Seeing this, Old Yu immediately said, "Little friend, don't be impatient. Your soul is injured and it's not good for you to think too much. You need to calm down and recuperate." Sure enough, as he had speculated before, even if Li Tai Bai was lucky enough to wake up, his mind was muddled. Although there were no signs of dementia for the time being, the aftereffects of soul injury were obviously not easy to bear. But in the end, his life was saved, which was a blessing in disguise. After checking Lu Yi a little, Old Yu left. A moment later, in Lin Yu's bedroom, Old Yu reported Lu Ye's current situation. Lin Yu sat by the bed and listened quietly. There was a person lying on the bed and it was Tong Shuyao. Just as Lu Yi had guessed, Tong Shuyao was seriously injured, but her injuries were much lighter than Lu Ye's. After being treated by the medical cultivators of Dark Moon Forest Pass, she was already fine. But her physique was not as good as Lu Ye's, so her recovery was slower. At this moment, Tong Shuyao was in a deep sleep. After Old Yu finished, Lin Yu said, "According to Old Yu, does Li Tai Bai still have a chance to advance to Divine Sea?" Old Yu shook his head slowly, "Unless he meets a good opportunity. Otherwise, not to mention advancing to Divine Sea in his current state, it would be difficult for him to maintain his normal cultivation." Just now, while he was talking to Lu Ye's headache had acted up several times, and each time he looked like he was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. How could he cultivate? But how difficult would it be to meet a good opportunity? In other words, Li Tai Bai would probably be stuck at third-order True Lake realm for the rest of his life, unable to advance any further. Moreover, he would definitely be tortured in the future, living a life worse than death. Does he know? Lin Yu asked again. This old man has already explained it to him. Old Yu replied. You can leave. Lin Yu waved her hand helplessly, sighing in her heart. She did not know how to deal with Li Tai Bai. If it was an ordinary cultivator, she could settle him at will, even leaving him in Dark Moon Forest Pass would not be a problem. But Tong Shuyao was obviously in love with Li Tai Bai, and this martial niece of hers was not clear about Li Tai Bai's situation. If she knew, who knew how sad she would be. There was also Zhang Kun's attitude. In the past few days, Zhang Kunming had wanted to blame Li Tai Bai. He felt that the Dark Moon Forest Pass had suffered such a calamity because Li Tai Bai killed Tan Shu. He did not even oppose Tong Shuyao's feelings for him, but now, it seemed that all his previous plans were unnecessary. In the 9 continents, there had been many monstrous geniuses since ancient times, but they could not mature and would only appear once. Take her for example. Among the cultivators of the same generation, there were many who were more talented than her. She used to look up to them, but now? Those people had all turned into dust, but she had a smooth cultivation. Now she was a 6th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator and sat on the throne of Dark Moon Forest Pass Little Pass Master. She had seen many things, so although Lin Yu felt sorry, she did not feel too much. Without giving any more orders, Lin Yu quickly left. Sensing Lin Yu's attitude, Elder Yu no longer cared as much about Lu Ye's treatment as before. It wasn't that he was taking advantage of the situation, but that he felt that with Li Tai Bai's talent, it would be better for him to die after encountering such a disaster. At the very least, he would be able to retain the glory he had when he was alive. People would remember the battle where he killed Tan Shu. The devastation after the battle slowly calmed down. A few days later, when Old Yu came once a day to check on Lu Ye's injuries, he found that he had woken up at some point. Lu Ye was sitting on the bed in a daze. He could not help but be surprised. You're awake. Lu Ye did not respond. After a while, he seemed to realize the reason for Old Yu's arrival. Otherwise, the 2 passes had not fought for many years. So many 10,000 Demons Ridge cultivators had died in battle. He clicked to download the best book chasing app. Many readers used it to read books aloud. Chapter 946. In Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lin Yu was just the little pass master while Zhang Kuan was the great pass master. Although Zhang Kuan's accusation wasn't very reasonable since the two camps had been fighting for so many years and it had always been you killing me, if she really wanted to investigate this matter, the root of the problem really lay with Li Tai Bai. As this thought flashed across her mind, she made up her mind, but the time wasn't right, so she decided to put it aside for the time being. 2 days later, old Yu examined Lu Yi and said, "Little friend's physique is strong and his physical injuries are no longer a problem, but this old master is powerless to heal the damage to his soul. In the future, little friend should focus on recuperating, perhaps there will be a day when he recovers." Of course, these were words of comfort as old Yu himself didn't believe that Li Tai Bai's soul could recover. "Many thanks, old Yu." Lu Yi thanked him and watched old Yu leave, only withdrawing his gaze after a long time. It was time to move on to the next step of the plan. In the end, he was Lu Yi of Grand Heaven Alliance, not Li Tai Bai of Myriad Demon Ridge. He had come to Dark Moon Forest Pass by chance, but he couldn't stay here forever. He had planned to find an opportunity to leave before, but the time just wasn't right. The breakthrough of Shocking Waves Lake Pass and Lu Yume's intervention had presented him with an opportunity. A severely damaged soul third-order true lake realm cultivator with no future to speak of? Presumably Lin Yu wouldn't refuse to let him go. Having made up his mind, Lu Yi walked out of his room and came to Lin Yu's bedchamber, where he was quickly summoned. After chatting for a while, Lin Yu asked about Lu Ye's current injuries, to which Lu Yi answered truthfully, but what made him feel a little strange was that Lin Yu's attitude was a little strange. As for what was strange he couldn't say. "Mistress, this humble servant has come here to resign." Lu Yi stated his intentions. "Resign?" Lin Yu was a little surprised. Lu Yi nodded and said, "Old Yu said that the damage to my soul is difficult to heal and that it requires a great opportunity. This humble servant wants to leave here and walk around, perhaps he will encounter some opportunities." Lin Yu nodded lightly, understanding Lu Ye's plan. There was no reason to stop him, because she had already planned to transfer Lu Yi away from Dark Moon Forest Pass, so that her martial nephew wouldn't be sad to see Lu Ye's condition after he recovered. She also wouldn't let Li Tai Bai, who had no future, ruin her martial nephew's future. However, she didn't expect that before she even mentioned this matter to Lu Yi would resign himself. It could be said that this was exactly what she wanted. "Have you decided?" Lin Yu asked. Lu Yi did not respond. Instead, he stared at a certain spot in a daze. Lin Yu followed his gaze but didn't discover anything. She couldn't help but sigh lightly in her heart. She knew that this was what Elder Yu said, the symptoms of being muddle-headed after the soul was injured. In such a state, there was no way for him to concentrate, so it was naturally difficult for him to maintain his cultivation. After a long while, Lu Yi seemed to come back to his senses. He rubbed his forehead and said, "Darren, please forgive me. I was lost in thought for a moment." "What did Darren ask just now?" Lin Yu said helplessly, "You've decided to leave?" "Yes, please allow me, Darren." "Since you've decided, I won't stop you, but there's something I need your help with." "My lord, please speak." "You more or less understand Yao Er's feelings for you, and I can also see that you don't have any feelings for Yao Er. So after you leave, I will tell Yao Er that you have already died in battle, and that you don't need to contact Yao Er anymore in the future. Have you two exchanged battle imprints?" "Never." Lu Yi shook his head. Of course, he wouldn't take the initiative to exchange imprints with Tong Shuyao. Tong Shuyao was probably too embarrassed to mention this before, so there was no way for them to contact each other. Tong Shuyao also couldn't rely on the imprint to determine whether he was dead or alive. "That's good. I hope you can promise me this. You're a smart one." Lin Yu looked at Lu Yi with gratification. "When are you going to leave?" "If Darren agrees, I'll leave now." "All right." Lin Yu nodded and took out a storage bag. "Take these things. They should be useful in the future. If one day you recover from your injuries, you can come to me." "Thank you, Darren." Lu Yi reached out and took the storage bag. "Then I'll take my leave." Walking out of Lin Yu's bedroom, Lu Yi didn't stop. He urged his spiritual power to soar into the sky and left the Dark Moon Forest Pass. By the window, Lin Yu looked in the direction Lu Yi left. Her expression was slightly complicated, but in the end, she sighed. After leaving the Dark Moon Forest Pass, Lu Yi hurried along. He didn't expect that his resignation would be approved so easily. Thinking about the storage bag Lin Yu gave him, he couldn't help but have a thought. Lin Yu probably also wanted him to leave the Dark Moon Forest Pass, but she didn't have time to tell him. Otherwise, why would she have prepared a storage bag in advance? Opening the storage bag, Yang Kai checked it and found that it was filled with cultivation materials. They weren't too valuable, but it was better than nothing. Deceiving Kangxi. Sure enough, Lin Yu really did want him to leave the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Thinking about it from her perspective, a third-order true Lake Realm cultivator with no future was naturally not worthy of her attention. Moreover, this person was still remembered by one of her juniors, so she couldn't tolerate him. This was exactly what Lu Yi wanted. Along the way, he would occasionally put on a confused expression and pretend to have a splitting headache. These were all symptoms of his soul being damaged. Only when he entered Liyuan did Lu Yi find a secluded place to rest. Next, he had to find a way to return to the Ash Flame Mountain Pass. Originally, he should have returned after leaving the Sword Artifact Sect's sealed world, but he was delayed for so many days. Thought Moon Immortal had sent him several messages asking about his situation, but Lu Yi found Yutu Lake and took her there. If he didn't return to the Ash Flame Mountain Pass, Thought Moon Immortal would probably come looking for him. When he came, he had Ing Wuji as his guide, so he flew all the way here quickly. However, it wouldn't be so smooth for him to return. After thinking about it, Lu Yi raised his hand and tapped on his battlefield mark, sending out a message. Xiaoying, are you still alive? Thought Moon Immortal took Ing Wuji away, so Lu Yi didn't know what happened after that. However, Ing Wuji's battlefield mark was still there, which meant that he wasn't dead. In the Lonely Mountain Pass, Ing Wuji, who was recuperating in his residence, checked the message and his eyes twitched. Xiaoying, even Lu Yi had started to call him that. If people who didn't know the truth knew about it, they would probably think that there was some unspeakable relationship between them. He immediately replied, I'm seriously injured. Don't disturb me. He couldn't have anything to do with Lu Yi anymore. Otherwise it would only get worse. Moreover, he really couldn't stay in Lonely Mountain Pass any longer. He had to find a way to get out of here as soon as possible. How did you get hurt? Lu Yi was surprised. You already know the answer. Why don't you ask your junior sister Shui Xian? Thinking back to what had happened that day, Ing Wuji was furious. After leaving the Sword Instrument Sect's secret realm, Nian Yuxian had carried him away and left. Naturally, they had encountered many Divine Sea Realm cultivators from the Myriad Devil Ridge. How could Ing Wuji get involved in a battle of this level? He had silently endured the aftermath of the battle. He was already lucky to have survived. His injuries weren't any worse than Lu Ye's. Fortunately, the Thought Moon Immortal didn't really want to kill him. When she sensed that he was seriously injured, she threw him away, allowing him to keep his life. Then you should recuperate. We'll meet again if we have the chance. Scram. Lu Yi thought for a moment after ending the transmission with Ing Wuji. He originally wanted to ask Ing Wuji to take him there again, but now that Ing Wuji was seriously injured, he couldn't borrow any strength. With Li Taibai's identity, he couldn't go to the Tsangyen Mountain Pass openly. In that case, he could only sneak back to the Tsangyen Mountain Pass himself. It wasn't hard, it just took a bit more time. Still maintaining Li Taibai's appearance, Lu Yi used the Stealth Spirit Rune to buff himself and rushed towards the Tsangyen Mountain Pass. This way, even if he was discovered, he could use Li Taibai's identity to get away. He hid during the day and came out at night. It was scary but not dangerous. After all, not every place was as busy as the Li Plains. The front line of the battle between the two factions was vast. Even if there were teams patrolling in all directions, they couldn't take care of everything. It took nearly 2 days before he arrived at the Tsangyen Mountain Pass. Only then did Lu Yi reveal himself. He put away the sword gourd and the sword at his waist, changed the color of the Red Dragon battle suit to black, and dispersed the Thousand Faces spirit rune that had been maintained for many days. Grand Sky Alliance's Lu Yi had returned. He took out Hu Po from his spirit beast pouch. Yi immediately came out to take a breather and said, Lu Yi, where did you go again? Why didn't you let us out for so long? Lu Yi then told them about his previous experience. Hu Po's eyes widened and Yi was speechless. While the spirit and tiger were secretly worried, they also wished they could fight side by side with Lu Yi. However, many people knew that Hu Po was Lu Yi's pet beast from the Jade Blood sect. Hu Po was also a very prominent symbol of his. So when he disguised himself as Li Taibai of the Thousand Demons Ridge, Hu Po couldn't appear. That Lu Yueme is so evil. If I have the chance in the future, I'll definitely take revenge. Yi was indignant. Lu Yi was quite calm. From her standpoint, it's normal for her to want to kill me. However, using public resources for private purposes is taboo for those in power. I don't know if Grand Sky City knows about this. Is third senior brother's situation over there very bad? It's not good. If there's a chance, let's go take a look together. Okay. E couldn't help but nod. E had a good impression of this third senior brother whom she had never met before. After all, he had sorted out all of his saber cultivation experience and handed it over to Lu Yi without hiding anything. E also knew about this. While they were talking, Lu Yi suddenly felt something and turned his head to look in a direction. He saw a stream of light rushing towards him. Behind this stream of light, there were several figures chasing after it. Lu Yi focused his vision and looked at the stream of light in front. He couldn't help but be stunned because he found that the person who came was actually someone he knew. Moreover, he had met her not long ago. The other party obviously also noticed him and couldn't help but be overjoyed. Just as she was about to call for help, her beautiful face turned pale. It was because Lu Yi had actually pulled out the long saber at his waist. His figure was like lightning as he welcomed her and slashed down. She clicked to download the best book chasing app. Many readers use this to read books aloud. Chapter 947. It was unknown what had happened to this person. She was already injured and her clothes were tattered, making her look extremely miserable. While running away, her body was exposed. Now that she was suddenly attacked by Lu Yi, she instinctively pushed her spirit energy to protect her body. The long saber slashed down, but was blocked by the spirit energy on the surface of her body. However, the unstoppable force could not be dispelled. With a cry of surprise, her body involuntarily fell down. Lu Yi followed closely behind with his saber. From afar, it looked as if his saber was pressing down on the other party. Landing on the ground in a sorry state, the woman was dizzy. In any case, she had the physique of a true Lake Realm cultivator. Although the pain was unbearable, she was not seriously injured. Before she could get up, a black saber was placed on her neck. Looking up along the long saber, he met Lu Ye's gaze that was looking down. Feeling the sharpness of the saber, her body could not help but stiffen. Shwa shwa shwa. Several figures landed not far away. They were the people who had chased after the woman. They seemed to have experienced a great battle and were covered in injuries. The leader of the group was a young man with a vigorous aura. He was a true Lake Realm 6th Order cultivator. Seeing the situation, he could not help but grin. Good job, fellow Taoist. Many thanks. Although with their cultivation they could have captured the woman sooner or later, with Lu Ye's help, it was naturally less troublesome. Saying so, he took a step forward and stretched out his hand to grab the woman. The other party's impolite attitude stunned Lu Yi. Although he could not figure out what had happened in a short time, he could guess. Otherwise he would have acted decisively just now. The mountain coiling saber was still placed on the man's slender white neck, not daring him to make any rash movements. However, no sword light flashed and cut through the void. The young man stopped and looked at the spirit boat in his hand. Frowning, he asked, "Fellow Taoist, what are you doing?" The people in front of me all looked at the spirit boat with kind expressions, all of them secretly urging their spirit energy. "What is he doing?" The spirit boat answered with a question. The young man said matter-of-factly, "Take him." Ling Zhou looked at me blankly. "He's in your hands. What does he want?" The young man couldn't help but frown. This man is one of Qin Kitten's men. Just now, when you were fighting, his companions were all killed, and you were the only one who escaped. Since you've fallen into the hands of my fellow Taoist, I would like to ask my fellow Taoist to return you to you. You can bring him back and interrogate him. Perhaps you'll be able to obtain some useless information. You're the one who brought him here. You should be the one to interrogate him. I'm sorry for troubling you guys. The young man raised his eyebrows, clearly misunderstanding something. Fellow Taoist, are you trying to steal the credit from all of you? The credit is in your hands. He's the one who wants to steal your credit. Spirit Boat looked at me blankly. The young man looked over, and the muscles at the corner of his eyes twitched slightly. His spirit force was filled with a safe aura. After a long time, he took a deep breath and asked, "What's your name?" "Myriad Demon's Ridge, Spirit Boat." "Myriad Devil's Ridge?" The young man frowned slightly. Myriad Devil's Ridge's leader was Missing Moon Immortal. This was a weakling who could single-handedly suppress an entire ridge. Who in the War Continent Guards knew about this? Spirit Boat said that he was from Myriad Devil's Ridge so that I wouldn't be fearful. However, I wasn't willing to just go in like that. Spirit Boat continued, "This place is already under your Wang Liangjin Ridge's jurisdiction. Since he's in your hands, you should deal with him. Everyone please go in." There was something wrong with his words. The area outside was indeed under Myriad Devil's Ridge's jurisdiction. As someone from Myriad Devil's Ridge, if Spirit Boat wanted to interfere, what could we say? The young man hesitated for a while before gritting his teeth. Since that's the case, I'll leave this person to him. I waved my hand and called out to the others, "You guys leave." After a while, several figures charged into the sky. Looking at the direction they were heading, it seemed like they were heading towards Clear Moon Cave. It was only when the figures of those people disappeared that the man, who had been sitting on the ground and unable to move, finally heaved a long sigh of relief. His entire being seemed to have been sucked dry. There were no tears at the corners of his eyes as he looked pitifully at the spirit boat. "Did he want to kill you?" Wang Liang kept his blade and Dan Dan said, "If he wanted to kill him, he would have died long ago. With my strength, that blade could have taken that man's life. The reason he was still alive was because Spirit Boat showed mercy. That was because that man was Qin Chudan." Qin Chudan smiled through his tears. "I knew that he would kill you." Spirit Boat looked at you and took out a piece of clothing from his storage bag. He took out a piece of clothing and threw it under your body, covering some of your exposed body. "What's going on?" Qin Chudan had a fearful look on his face. "You heard it just now. You were patrolling the area with a few people. It was De Xian who encountered our team. We had a small battle and everyone else died. You're the only one left alive. The point guard is here." Spirit Boat frowned. "Because he is a man? That makes sense. The others are all dead, only Qin Chudan is still alive and your cultivation level is so low. You were able to survive only because you are a male cultivator with a wrong figure and appearance." Thinking about Qin Chudan's ragged clothes, the Spirit Boat vaguely understood something. "Yes." Qin Chudan nodded, his face full of fear. For some male cultivators, there were some things that were more terrifying than death. "So you had already made up your mind just now. If Spirit Boat handed you over to these people, you would immediately commit suicide and would definitely struggle at death's door. Fortunately, Wang Liang didn't do that. Only when you first met him did the Spirit Boat stab you, giving you a fright. At that time, you were flustered and your mind was in chaos. You didn't think too much. Now that you think about it, Spirit Boat's approach was the most correct response. They were on the same side. When Spirit Boat saw you, he should have fought with you. He should have been able to treat you coldly. If that was the case, the secret that the two of you didn't know each other would be exposed to these people. In that case, the moment Spirit Boat saw you, he had already seen through many things and thought of a countermeasure. How meticulous his thinking was and how fast his reaction was. Qin Chudan secretly rejoiced. Spirit Boat was silent for a moment. He once again recalled the sect master's teachings. There were good and evil in the law, and there were good and evil in people. Two small factions were enemies. It was normal for them to attack and kill each other. However, the name of Haotian Alliance did not necessarily represent darkness. Above the name that seemed to represent justice, there were many shadows. In these shadows, there were many disagreements and filth surging in the shadows. "Luye, thank you for that." Qin Chudan sincerely thanked him. If he had coincidentally met Spirit Boat, he would have died today. "Yes, let's go." Spirit Boat called out and summoned his Luye. Qin Chudan was dumbfounded. Go where?" Spirit Boat looked at him as if it was natural. "He's your captive. Naturally, he has to follow you back to Wanamo Ridge." Qin Chudan's eyes widened. "He's planning to let you go? How did he become a captive?" He had just left the wolf's den and entered the tiger's mouth. Wang Liangjin felt the world spinning. "Stop talking nonsense. Slow down." Spirit Boat stood under his Luye and called out. Even if he wanted to let him go, he could do so immediately. Otherwise, once the news was leaked, he would be accused of having secret relations with the enemy. Wang Liang had always been cautious. How could he make such a mistake? Bring him back and hand him over to Thought Moon Immortal. Even if Qin Chudan ran away, Thought Moon Immortal would be there to take care of it. Qin Chudan naturally wanted to learn Spirit Boat's plan. Seeing that Spirit Boat was really going to capture him, he was annoyed. He really has a heart of stone. To think that he helped him last time. Although he earned 8 drops of soul-cleansing water, he did not have any relationship with him. Why would he want to capture him? Stop talking nonsense. Spirit Boat pulled out half of his Panshan saber. Qin Chudan decisively jumped off his Luye. Slowly he returned to the 10,000 Devil's Ridge. Just as he returned, Thought Moon Immortal appeared behind him. She looked at him from head to toe and confirmed that he was missing an arm or a leg. Only then could she come up. "Greetings." Spirit Boat cupped his fists and bowed. Thank you for your concern. I'm sorry. It's good that you're back. Thought Moon Immortal replied calmly. Suddenly, she looked sharply at the pitiful Wang Liangjin who was standing in front of Spirit Boat. She saw that he was wearing bright clothes. His inner and outer clothes did not seem to be tattered. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Who are you? Spirit Boat replied, You are? Who are you? Spirit Boat only knows that you are called Qin Chudan, but that is obviously your real name. Qin Chudan and Yi Ba were both pseudonyms. I know this very well. He turned around and gave Qin Chudan a look. That is your family's, thought Moon Immortal. I asked him a question and he answered truthfully. Qin Chudan trembled as he walked out from Spirit Boat. He raised his head and dared to look at Thought Moon Immortal. Because in his knowledge, the 10,000 Devils Ridge's Thought Moon Immortal was an extremely terrifying person. Even his own Ridge's lord, Wanzhanggang, was afraid of him. He bowed respectfully. His voice was still trembling. Greetings, Junior from Ashen Flame Mountain. Spirit Boat revealed a look of understanding. He finally knew that man's name. He hasn't returned recently. Is it because of you? The Thought Moon Immortal asked. Recently, the Spirit Boat has been returning constantly. You have also sent a few messages to ask about the situation. The Spirit Boat has always said nothing. The main reason is that it's easy to say. It only says that it has nothing to do and will return in the future. However, this caused Thought Moon Immortal to misunderstand. That's not the case. Wang Liangjin hurriedly replied. I don't know anything. You are not from Grand Heaven Alliance. You are from Qin Kitten's lonely mountain city. Thought Moon Immortal was confused. Then how did they? In your eyes, they are my captives. Spirit Boat replied firmly, causing Ashen Flame Mountain to look at him resentfully. Thought Moon Immortal laughed. Did you capture them on the way back? You are just a nobody. How could you capture them on the way back? Ashen Flame Mountain was filled with sorrow. The Spirit Boat then narrated what happened just now in a complicated way. Nian Yuxian's pretty face brightened up as she listened. As a male cultivator, you can naturally see that other male cultivators have encountered the same thing. Although Wang Liang saved us at Sangyan Mountain and saved us from misfortune, these people must have done such evil things only once. There must be no other male cultivators who have encountered our evil schemes. Enemies could be beaten or killed, but such humiliation would naturally be despised by others. She clicked and downloaded the best book chasing app. Many readers use this to read books aloud. Chapter 948. Then what are you going to do with her? Thought Moon Immortal asked. Lu Yi glanced at Qin Chudan and cupped his fists. Master, please make the decision. At the same time he used his divine sense to send a message. Master, I have known her since the Cloud River battlefield. Last time I asked her to send a message to Wuxia. Thought Moon Immortal understood and nodded slightly. She said to Qin Chudan, I need a servant girl. You will follow me from now on. Qin Chudan wanted to cry, but she didn't dare to disobey. She could only answer with a yes, and comfort herself. So be it. Working for such a famous warrior in the Spirit Sea realm was not a disgrace to her. It was better than being captured alive by those people. Thought Moon Immortal looked at Lu Yi. Go and rest. Come find me tomorrow. I have something to tell you. Yes, I will take my leave. After Lu Yi left, Nian Yu Immortal's figure also disappeared in a flash, leaving Qin Chudan standing there alone. She couldn't help but feel a little dazed. For a moment she didn't know where to go or what to do. After thinking for a while she chased after Lu Yi. Soon she arrived at Lu Ye's bamboo house. She knocked on the door. Lu Ye, what should I do now? But there was no response. After knocking for a while the door opened. Lu Yi walked past her with his saber as if he couldn't see her at all. Qin Chudan was furious. She stood in front of Lu Yi and said, Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. Lu Yi stood there and thought for a while. Then he seemed to remember something. He turned around and went back to the bamboo house, closing the door with a bang. Qin Chudan was dumbfounded. She felt that Lu Ye was a bad guy. He had captured her and now he didn't care about her at all. He even pretended not to see her. She had even sent him a message and brought him something last time. Wuxia was right. Nothing good would happen to anyone who interacted with him. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. He couldn't see her. Suddenly an idea flashed through her mind. Qin Chudan's heart skipped a beat. She vaguely realized something. Inside the bamboo house, Lu Yi sat cross-legged and replied to Qing Xiu's message. Cheng Xiu was the person in charge of handing over the exploding fire spirit stones to Lu Yi from the law department. Previously, he would come to the vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass every 7 days to collect the exploding fire spirit stones that Lu Yi had made. However, Lu Yi thought it was too troublesome, so she asked him to report to Chen Wudong and change the visit from once every 7 days to once every month. Gan Wudong also agreed. As a result, Lu Yi had been wandering outside for the past 2 months, so he naturally couldn't hand over the explosive fire spirit stones. During this time, Cheng Xiu had sent him more than once to ask about the situation. Lu Yi only asked him to continue waiting. Now that they had finally returned to the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass, it was time to hand over the exploding fire spirit stones. After all, this was related to the acquisition of battle merits. They agreed to collect the goods the next day. Cheng Xiu readily agreed. In fact, Lu Yi also wanted to ask how the explosive fire spirit rock he refined ended up at the Startling Waves Lake Pass. However, it wasn't appropriate for him to ask. After all, as Lu Yi, he shouldn't have known about the situation at the Startling Waves Lake Pass so quickly. After the discussion was settled, Lu Yi used his divine sense to scan the outside. However, Qin Chudan was nowhere to be found. There was no trace of her within a 1-mile radius. She's not too stupid, Lu Yi muttered to himself. They had some friendship and he had even asked her for help last time. Lu Yi couldn't make things too difficult for Qin Chudan. However, when he rescued her from the Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators, he couldn't immediately let her go. He could only bring her back to the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass. Now that she was lost at the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass, it had nothing to do with him. He still had Jianghu Immortal to take care of. He didn't cultivate. He had already agreed to collect the goods the next day with Cheng Xiu. However, he didn't even have a single explosive fire spirit stone on hand. He could only work overtime today to refine them. This wasn't difficult for him. Refining explosive fire spirit stones was something he could do with a few hands. 2 months' worth of explosive fire spirit stones meant 60,000 explosive fire spirit stones. This would bring Lu Yi a total of 300,000 battle merits. This didn't even include the extra gains he had made with Gan Wudong. The night passed uneventfully. The next day, when Cheng Xiu arrived at the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass as promised, Lu Yi had already prepared the 60,000 explosive fire spirit stones. After the exchange, Cheng Xiu left in satisfaction. Lu Yi didn't have time to rest. He immediately rushed to Jianghu Immortal's residence. Lu Yi stepped into the bamboo house. After receiving permission, he sat down. The woman you brought back yesterday has safely returned to the Lonely Mountain Pass, Jianghu Immortal said. Lu Yi was stunned for a moment before he realized that Jianghu Immortal must have secretly escorted her. Otherwise she wouldn't know so much. He immediately cupped his fists. Thank you, my lord. Also, I'm going into seclusion. Jianghu Immortal spoke again. Don't worry, my lord. I will do my best to look after the pass. Jianghu Immortal shook her head. This seclusion may take some time. If a divine sea realm cultivator like her said that it would take some time, then it definitely wouldn't be short. It would most likely be calculated in years. Lu Yi was deep in thought. My lord, you've gained a lot in the Sword Instrument Sect's secret realm. Jianghu Immortal nodded. In the Sword Mountain, every flying sword contains a remnant consciousness of the Sword Instrument Sect's ancestors. There are many exquisite sword principles. I've gained a lot from climbing the Sword Mountain. I need to study them well. Also, she took out the Willow Catkin short sword. I need to completely refine this treasure. The Willow Catkin short sword was an existence that surpassed a spirit treasure. Although Jianghu Immortal had refined it for a while, she hadn't fully refined it. According to her own estimation, it would take a long time to completely refine the Willow Catkin. My lord, you mean? Lu Yi vaguely understood. If Jianghu Immortal was only in seclusion for 10 days, half a month, or even a month or two, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if it was too long, she would have to find a safe and secure place. Therefore, she would have to leave the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass. Once she left, there would be no one to guard this place. Lu Yi, a third-order True Lake Realm cultivator, wouldn't be able to do anything. It would be dangerous for him to stay here alone. Once the people from Myriad Demon Ridge knew about the situation here, they would send a large number of troops to invade, even if it was for the sake of Lu Yi from the Blue Blood sect. I've already reported this matter to Grand Sky City. In a few days, there will be other Divine Sea Realm cultivators here to take over. At the same time, a large number of state guards will be mobilized. In the future, the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass will be the same as the other mountain passes. The uniqueness of the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass lay in Jianghu Immortal. One person guarding an entire mountain pass made her famous in the entire 9 provinces. However, without Jianghu Immortal, the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass would be no different from the other mountain passes. I'll give you 3 choices. Jianghu Immortal looked at Lu Yi. First, stay in the Ashen Flame Mountain Pass. Now that you have the rank of Commandant, your strength isn't weak. No matter which Divine Sea Realm cultivator comes, they won't underestimate you. Of course, because of your relationship with the Blue Blood sect, they might treat you as an enemy. If that's the case, your future days won't be easy. Second, if there's a mountain pass you want to go to, I'll help you transfer it. What about the third one? Lu Yi asked. Jianghu Immortal's eyes shone. The head of the law department, Chen Wudong, has been asking me for you. He wanted to transfer you to the law department, but I ignored him. If you don't want to go to the mountain pass, you can go to the law department. Although Chen Wudong is sometimes unreliable, at least you don't have to worry about him targeting you. Moreover, you seem to have made some deals with him before. If you really go to the law department, you will be valued. I understand. Lu Yi nodded. Your Excellency, what do you suggest? Jianghu Immortal glanced at him and said slowly, you must be very clear about the uniqueness of the Blue Blood sect. In the War Province, the Blue Blood sect has many friends but also many enemies. No matter which mountain pass you go to, it's hard to guarantee that you won't be targeted. Because basically every mountain pass has at least 2 mountain pass masters, and above the mountain pass masters are the mountain pass masters. The mountain pass masters also have friends. If someone insists on making things difficult for you, it's hard for you to guard against it. The law department is different. It has a lot of power and is a very powerful organization. Chen Wudong is a good person and has always been protective of his own people. He values you. If you work under him, you will definitely be able to obtain important things in the future. That's why Your Excellency suggested that I go to the law department. This is just my personal suggestion. It's up to you whether you want to go or not. There's no need to rush to give me an answer. Just give me an answer in 3 days. Before I go into seclusion, I'll arrange everything for you. I understand. Thank you for your consideration. Jianghu Immortal's eyes shone with a complicated light. You've helped me a lot during this time. It's what I should do. Thinking back, Lu Yi had only been in the Vicissitude Mountain Pass for a few months, but many things had happened in these few months that were more exciting than when she had been alone for decades. By the way, Your Excellency, this is for you. Lu Yi took out a jade slip. This is. Jianghu Immortal looked at him suspiciously. A copy of the Sword Dao Quintessence of the Sword Tool Sect, Lu Yi explained. It should be useful for you. Before the Sword Tool Sect's secret realm collapsed, Kong Kong had given the Sword Gourd, the sect master's keepsake, to Lu Yi. At the same time, he had also given him a jade slip that recorded the Sword Tool Sect's essence of forging and the Sword Dao Quintessence. Jianghu Immortal had no use for the essence of forging, but the Sword Dao Quintessence was suitable for her. Yesterday, Lu Yi had already divided the contents of the jade slip into 2 parts and made a few copies with his divine perception. Jianghu Immortal nodded. Thank you. Then I'll take my leave. After walking out of Jianghu Immortal's bamboo house and returning to his residence, Lu Yi sat down and pondered. Yi saw this and asked, what happened? Our sect master will be in seclusion for a long time. Lu Yi told her the 3 choices he had obtained from Jianghu Immortal. Yi asked, then which one do you choose? Actually, I want to go to the Startling Waves Lake Pass. Lu Ye's words were shocking. 3rd Senior Martial Brother's situation was worrying. If he could go to the Startling Waves Lake Pass, he could take care of 3rd Senior Martial Brother. However, if he really went, there would be a big problem. His identity as a disciple of the Jade Blood sect would definitely attract a lot of attention and suppression. Lu Yi clicked and downloaded the best book chasing app. Many readers used it to read books aloud. Chapter 949. The reason why 3rd Senior Brother Xiaoxing he suffered so much injustice over there, and Tan Shu even tried to kill him with a borrowed knife in public, was because of his connection to the Blue Blood sect. Xiaoxing he was now a disciple of Azure Emperor City, but his situation over there was so worrying. If Lu Yi, an orthodox disciple of the Blue Blood sect, went to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, he would definitely be suppressed. Therefore, even if he wanted to go to the Shocking Waves Lake Pass, he didn't know if he would be able to go. Staying in the Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass was not advisable. Just as the Thought Moon Immortal had said, The Blue Blood sect had many friends and enemies in the military province. If the Spirit Sea Realm warrior who came here had a grudge against the headmaster, he would not have an easy time in the future. Therefore, although Thought Moon Immortal gave him 3 choices, there was only one. Go to the Law Division and serve under Gan Wudong. Fortunately, this was not unexpected. Lu Yi had cooperated with the A3 squad last time and performed well. Coupled with the transaction of the exploding fire spirit stones, if he really went to the Law Division, Gan Wudong would not look down on him. With a decision in his heart, Lu Yi no longer thought about it. Suddenly, a movement came from the battlefield mark. Lu Yi checked and found that he had obtained the merit to refine the exploding fire spirit stones. 60,000 exploding fire spirit stones were given to him. It brought him a total of 300,000 merit points. Now, his merit points were as high as 520,000, breaking the previous record. It was easy for Lu Yi to obtain battle merits, but the consumption was also great. Not to mention the long period of time it would take to exchange for the golden spiritual stick for cultivation. There were many treasures in the War Merit Pavilion that caught Lu Ye's eye. All of these would require a large amount of battle merits. After breaking through to the Third Order True Lake Realm, Lu Yi felt that his cultivation speed was too fast, so he didn't cultivate diligently for the past 2 months. He was afraid that his foundation would be unstable. Now that he had so many battle achievements in hand and had more than 2 months of accumulation, it was time for him to raise his cultivation. If he really wanted to go to the Law Division in the future, the higher his cultivation, the better. Moreover, he was now at the Third Order True Lake Realm, and above that was the Fourth Order True Lake Realm. In the 4 realms of cultivators, each great realm had a threshold of 4 or 7. The Fourth Order and Seventh Order cultivators could increase their strength significantly. This was also the reason why Lu Ye's killing of Tan Shu, a True Lake Realm 7th Order True Lake Realm cultivator, had caused so much commotion among the cultivators on both sides. Even when he defeated the sword cultivator Zhang Yulin, who was at the 6th Order True Lake Realm, no one would have thought that he would be able to defeat Tan Shu. In the end, not only did he win, he even killed Tan Shu in an instant. Lu Yi went to the Tianji Hall and connected to the War Merit Pavilion. As usual, he fed the 2 flood dragons. He exchanged for 20 golden spirit sticks in one go. If other people were to see such a heroic way of doing things, they would most likely be shocked. The cultivators of the 9 regions had never bought so many golden spirit sticks at once from the Tianji treasure house. Most of them used 1 stick to buy 1 stick. After all, it was not easy to obtain battle merits. He spent the next few days cultivating. 3 days later, Lu Yi once again arrived at Missing Moon Immortal's bamboo house. "Have you made up your mind?" Thought Moon Immortal asked. "Yes, this humble servant is willing to join the Law Division. Please recommend me, sir." This result was expected, so Missing Moon Immortal wasn't too surprised. As for the recommendation, there was no need. As early as the last time Lu Yi went to Grand Sky City, Gan Wudong wanted to ask Missing Moon Immortal for him. At that time, he only felt that Lu Yi had great potential and couldn't bear to see him waste away in the Blue Flame Mountain Pass. Everything that happened later made Gan Wudong realize Lu Ye's great value, especially when it came to refining exploding fire spirit stones. It could be said that Lu Ye's role in this field was comparable to that of several Spirit Sea Realm cultivators. Lu Yi was willing to join the Law Division, so Gan Wudong couldn't ask for more. "Then you can go. I've already informed Gan Wudong." "Yes." Lu Yi replied firmly, "This humble servant wishes Sir good luck and a new high in your retreat." He respectfully left, turned around and strode away. "Lu Yi." Missing Moon Immortal's voice came from behind. Lu Yi turned back. "What else does Sir want?" Missing Moon Immortal's red lips squirmed a few times. "Be careful. No matter what happens in the future, protecting yourself is the most important thing." Lu Yi nodded seriously. "Thank you for your concern, sir." She stomped her feet on the ground, activated her spiritual power, and shot up into the sky, turning into a red dot in an instant. Missing Moon Immortal walked to the door and looked up. She didn't look away until Lu Ye's figure disappeared from her sight. Lu Yi was gone, but she had to continue waiting. There were some procedures to be done in Great Sky City. At the very least, she had to wait until things settled down in Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass before she could leave. The whole world seemed to be empty. Missing Moon Immortal couldn't help but frown. She had been guarding this place alone for decades and was used to this kind of loneliness. When Lu Yi was here, they didn't talk much. The entire Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass was quiet. But after Lu Yi left, she realized that the current loneliness was not the same as the previous silence. In just a few months her state of mind was affected. She sped all the way to Great Sky City. Lu Yi didn't expect that his days in Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass would be so short. It seemed that he had only been there for 4 or 5 months, with 2 months in the Sword Instrument Sect's sealed world. In other words, he had been in Vicissitude Flame Mountain Pass for less than 3 months. But this couldn't be helped. Missing Moon Immortal had to go into seclusion for a long time. As a third-order true Lake Realm cultivator, he wasn't qualified to guard such a big pass. He didn't know who the new higher-ups were, and he didn't know if they would make things difficult for him. Instead of waiting for such an uncertain future, it was better to walk on a stable path. At the very least, he had interacted with Qian Wudong before, and this person didn't have any ill intentions towards him. The journey was peaceful. Great Sky City was in sight. Entering the city, Lu Yi went straight to the main hall of the law department. After being notified, he entered with a sword in hand. Qian Wudong was sitting behind a table, seemingly handling official business. Seeing his arrival, he smiled and pointed to the side. "Take a seat first." Lu Yi sat down and closed his eyes to rest. After a while, someone served him tea, and a wisp of fragrance wafted into his nose. Lu Yi opened his eyes and found that the person serving the tea was the beautiful female cultivator he saw last time. Their eyes met, and Lu Yi nodded slightly to greet her. The female cultivator pursed her lips and smiled. She didn't leave but went straight behind Qian Wudong and massaged his shoulders. Her posture was as gentle as water, and from time to time she would lean on Qian Wudong and look at Wenshu with him. It was an intimate scene. Lu Yi took a sip of tea and turned his head to look outside. Qian Wudong wasn't a good person either. Although he didn't know who this woman was, he could roughly guess from her posture that she was probably Qian Wudong's wife or concubine, and he doted on her a lot. Otherwise, how could Qian Wudong, the head of the law department, indulge her so much in such an occasion? The woman didn't look old, but in the group of cultivators, it was impossible to tell her age from her appearance. Take Shui Yuan and Missing Moon Immortal for example. At first glance they looked like they were in their early 20s, but in fact they were much older than that. Therefore, even though this woman looked young, she could be dozens of years old. As for her cultivation, Lu Yi couldn't tell. She didn't use her spiritual power, so it was hard to tell. "Okay, you can leave now," Qian Wudong suddenly said. Gan Wudong suddenly said. He probably felt that he had to maintain his image as a department head in front of Lu Yi. No matter what, he and Lu Yi would be subordinates in the future. The woman pursed her lips and looked unhappy. She grabbed Qian Wudong's arm and said coquettishly, "No." Lu Yi had goosebumps all over his body. Qian Wudong comforted her and promised to see her later. Then he coaxed her to leave. The woman was quite courteous. Before she left, she didn't forget to bow to Lu Yi. After the woman left, Qian Wudong waved at Lu Yi. Lu Yi stood up and stood in front of the table. He cupped his fists and said, "Lu Yi of the Jade Blood Sect reporting for duty." Qian Wudong leaned back in his chair and looked at Lu Yi with satisfaction. "I wanted to transfer you to the law department, but Missing Moon Immortal wouldn't let you go. There was nothing I could do. Fortunately, she had some matters to attend to this time, so she entrusted you to me. It can be said that the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks." After a pause he asked, "Do you know what happened to Nian Yuxian? She has never left the Blue Flame Mountain Pass for so many years. It is surprising that she suddenly wants to resign." Lu Yi frowned slightly. From Qian Wudong's words, he didn't know that Missing Moon Immortal was going to cultivate in seclusion. If Missing Moon Immortal didn't say anything, Lu Yi wouldn't say anything. He replied, "I don't know. I don't have much interaction with the Mountain Pass Master. She won't tell me anything." Qian Wudong nodded slightly. "That's normal. How could a Divine Sea Realm cultivator tell a true Lake Realm cultivator, especially someone like Missing Moon Immortal? No matter what, you are now a member of the law department. I plan to let you focus on making explosive fire spirit stones. Do you have any objections?" "Yes." Lu Yi replied immediately. Qian Wudong smiled. "Tell me if you have any objections. It is up to me whether I accept them or not. Making explosive fire spirit stones doesn't take much effort. I am confident that I can do it while I am on duty, so I don't need to devote myself to it." Qian Wudong understood. "You mean you want to join the law enforcement hall and go out to do missions?" "Yes." "Tell me the reason." Lu Yi pondered for a moment and said, "Ever since your humble servant embarked on the path of cultivation, I have experienced the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. However, no matter which battlefield it was it was still a small part of the 9 prefectures. Now that your humble servant has reached the true lake stage, I would like to experience more of the 9 prefectures. Therefore, I do not wish to be trapped in a small corner. That's reasonable. Qian Wudong rubbed his chin. Based on your cultivation and your performance last time, it's not a problem for you to join the law enforcement hall. But you have to think about it carefully. The law enforcement hall is always dangerous when carrying out missions. If you are willing to devote yourself to making bursting fire spiritual stones, your safety will be guaranteed. Chapter 950. If we cultivators blindly pursue peace and tranquility, then there is no need for us to cultivate. Your humble servant can simply stagnate at the 9th level of the Spirit Stream Heaven or the 9th level of the Cloud River Heaven, and dominate the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. Qian Wudong nodded. What you said makes sense. But I still hope you can consider it carefully. With your efficiency in refining the explosive fire spirit rock, the battle points you get every month are enough to satisfy your cultivation needs. You don't need to go out and take risks. If you still want to join the law enforcement hall in the future, it won't be a problem. In the entire 9 states, only Lu Yi could refine the explosive fire spirit rock. Qian Wudong didn't want him to take any risks, but he also knew that this kind of thing couldn't be forced, so he couldn't order Lu Yi to do anything. Lu Yi said, "I'll remember sir's concern. But I'm still very confident in improving my cultivation. Sir, you may not know this, but my cultivation aptitude is excellent." If Lu Yi wanted to work under Qian Wudong in the future, he wouldn't be able to hide the fact that he improved his cultivation. Instead of letting Qian Wudong guess that he improved too quickly, he might as well tell him now. Qian Wudong almost laughed. "You don't know how you got the title of One Leaf? Sir, you've misunderstood. When I tested my talent in the Evil Moon Valley that day, I did indeed receive the title of Iya. However, something must have gone wrong during the test. Later, I tested my talent again, and the result was very different from that day." Qian Wudong was interested. What was the result? "I'm very talented. I have 8 branches and 8 leaves. That's a top talent," Lu Yi said calmly. Although he didn't test his talent himself, the giant stone plate he encountered with Wuxia at the mouth of the Tsangyan volcano was probably used to test his talent. The result was indeed a top talent. Really? Qian Wudong couldn't help but be surprised. In the 9 states, there weren't many cultivators with 60 leaves or more. Basically, all the core disciples of the top sects had this kind of talent. But for those with 60 leaves and more leaves, the number of cultivators with 60 leaves decreased rapidly. As for those with 64 leaves, they were even rarer. If Lu Yi really had the aptitude of a 64-leaf cultivator, some things would make sense. Qian Wudong had always been confused. Lu Ye's cultivation speed didn't match his reputation as a one-leaf cultivator. He thought it was because he had many opportunities, but now it seemed that the opportunities were only a part of it. Lu Ye's talent was the most important factor. Otherwise, it wouldn't be enough if he only had opportunities and no talent. "This humble servant remembers the last time I saw sir. This humble servant was only a first-order smelly lake cultivator, but now, this humble servant is already a 3rd order," Lu Yi said. He slightly activated his spiritual power. If he didn't mention it, Qian Wudong wouldn't have realized it. Qian Wudong was a divine sea realm cultivator, but he wouldn't check other people's cultivation level for no reason. Until now, when Lu Ye's 3rd order true lake realm spirit chi fluctuations appeared, Gan Wudong was shocked. Calculating the time, it had only been 3 months, yet Lu Yi had already broken through from the 1st order to the 3rd order. If one were to continue looking back, Lu Yi hadn't even reached the true lake realm when he joined the War Province Guard. In other words, in just over 4 months, he had advanced from the 9th order Cloud River realm to the 3rd order true lake realm. Such a cultivation speed was simply terrifying. With the facts in front of him, Qian Wudong had no choice but to believe Lu Ye's words. He couldn't help but sigh. Old Tang really picked up a treasure. He had more or less heard about Lu Yi joining the Blue Blood sect. It was said that when Lu Yi was tested to have a one-leaf talent, there was no hope for him to join a sect. In the end, someone secretly instructed him to choose the Blue Blood sect as his only choice. That was how he joined the Blue Blood sect. It wasn't wrong to say that Lu Yi was picked up. "Alright, this king will believe you for the time being and grant your request. It just so happens that the A3 squad is still lacking a member. Since the last time you went on a mission with them, King Gungwu has been talking about you in front of me. How about you join the A3 squad? Sir, you can make the decision. Lu Yi naturally had no objections. No matter what, he had cooperated with King Gungwu and the others once and even had a drink with them, so he was somewhat familiar with them. Qian Wudong nodded slightly. In that case, you may act freely until the official order is given. Yes. Lu Yi strode away. After Lu Yi left, Qian Wudong turned his gaze to a corner of the hall and said helplessly, "Come out." In the darkness over there was a woman whose shadow was different from the shadow. It was actually the woman who served tea to Lu Yi before. She had already left, but somehow she came back again. Even Lu Yi didn't notice her. She could fool Lu Yi, but she couldn't fool Qian Wudong, who was in the Divine Ocean realm. She didn't point it out earlier because she didn't want to. The woman revealed herself and stuck out her tongue playfully at Qian Wudong. Qian Wudong stared at her and said, "You're getting more and more out of hand." The woman walked forward and grabbed Qian Wudong's arm. Qian Wudong felt dizzy and quickly raised his hand. "That's enough. If you have something to say, just say it." Based on his understanding of the woman, he could tell that she had something to ask of him. He felt a headache coming because he couldn't say no to her every time. "I want to join the law enforcement hall too," the woman said. Qian Wudong frowned. "Why do you want to join the law enforcement hall?" "To help you." "Nonsense. Just stay by my side. It's dangerous outside." Qian Wudong glared at her. "But I can't stay by your side forever. Those with lower cultivation than me are running around everywhere. I'm already in the 7th Order True Lake realm. How can I be worse than them?" "You can't say that. They have their reasons to run around everywhere. You don't have to." "Why don't I? They are cultivators and so am I. I don't care. I want to join the law enforcement hall too. Do you agree or not?" "Impossible." Qian Wudong refused immediately. Sob, sob, sob. The woman's face was suddenly covered in tears and bean-sized tears flowed out. Qian Wudong was the head of the law enforcement hall. He was a famous Divine Ocean Realm cultivator in the 9 states. At this moment he didn't know what to do. Just as he was about to comfort her, the woman stomped her foot and said with red eyes, "I hate you." She turned around and dashed out. Qian Wudong's hand froze in midair. He could only hear the words, "I hate you," echoing in his ears. His heart was about to break. After a while, the woman ran into the law enforcement hall crying and threw herself into the arms of the law enforcement hall's head. "Auntie Fan." Fan Xiangyi was stunned. "What happened?" "Who bullied you?" "Tell Auntie Fan. Auntie Fan will teach him a lesson." "Qian Wudong bullied me." The woman looked up and said a name decisively. Fan Xiangyi was speechless. After leaving the law enforcement hall, Lu Yi looked around and suddenly felt like he was drifting. Qian Wudong told him to act freely without an official order, but he didn't know what to do. After all, the disciples of other sects had fellow disciples or elders in Grand Sky City. However, he was the only one here in the Blue Blood sect. He couldn't find anyone to talk to. After thinking about it, he decided to send a message to King Gungwu. In the future they would be colleagues or even teammates. It would be good to contact each other in advance. King Gungwu replied quickly. The A3 squad was not in Grand Sky City. They were currently on a mission outside and would take a few days to return. He had no choice but to give up. Just as he was about to find a room to rest, the battlefield imprint suddenly vibrated. Lu Yi checked and was surprised, because the person who sent the message was actually the sect master. This was the first time something like this had happened. Although Lu Yi had the sect master's imprint, they had never sent a message to each other. He usually contacted Shui Yuan more often, so he didn't know why the sect master suddenly sent a message. He quickly replied, "Sect master, do you have any orders?" After a while another message came. "You're in Grand Sky City?" It was not surprising that the sect master knew about this. Shui Yuan and Yan Yuxian were close friends. Yan Yuxian must have sent a message to Shui Yuan about him leaving the Blue Flame Mountain Pass. The sect master must have heard about it from Shui Yuan. "Yes. Where are you?" Lu Yi scratched his head, but before he could reply, the sect master sent another message, "I see you." Lu Yi was stunned, but the next moment he felt someone approaching him quickly. He looked up and saw 2 streams of light falling from the sky and landing not far away from him. One of them was immortal-like and energetic. Who else could it be but the sect master? Lu Yi was overjoyed and quickly bowed. "Greetings, sect master." Tang Yifeng looked at him with a smile and raised his hand. An invisible force lifted Lu Yi up. Lu Yi looked at the person next to the sect master. Although she was dressed as a man, she had both the gentleness of a woman and the boldness of a man. Palace Master Pang. Greetings, senior apprentice brother. Pang Huanin bowed, but it was not a woman's bow but a man's fist salute. Why are you guys? Lu Yi didn't understand why the sect master came to Grand Sky City and why Pang Huanin came with him. I'm here to work in Grand Sky City. As for Palace Master Pang, she's preparing to join the military prefecture guards, so she came with me. Work. Lu Yi was surprised. He didn't know what the sect master's job was. The sect master smiled, looking a little enigmatic. You're still young, so you naturally don't know that the Jade Blood sect is part of the military prefecture guards elder group. It's just that I've been engrossed in cultivating my body all these years, so I haven't been here. Lu Yi instantly understood. In the past, the Jade Blood sect had a small population. Even if the Jade Blood sect had a seat in the elder group, the sect master had no interest in running the sect. He didn't even have any disciples, so what could he do in the elder group? But the situation was different now. Lu Yi had joined the military prefecture guards, and more Jade Blood sect disciples would join the military prefecture guards in the future. The disciples of other sects had elders to take care of them when they came here, so they wouldn't be bullied by others. Naturally, the Jade Blood sect couldn't do without them. Otherwise, it would be easy for something like last time to happen. Other things aside, when the Jade Blood sect disciples joined the military prefecture guards in the future, at least they wouldn't be conscripted to some special places. Lu Yi clicked to download the best book-chasing app. Many readers used it to read books aloud. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.